The UNSC graveyard at Reach's orbital space was a monument to failure. Dozens of warships floated dead in the void, frigates with their spines broken, destroyers torn open by plasma fire, cruisers that had died protecting evacuation convoys. Tony watched through the Pillar of Autumn's viewport as they approached the rendezvous coordinates, and felt the weight of 5 billion deaths pressing against him like physical force. "That's the Grafton," Engineer Cat said quietly, pointing to a frigate drifting with its reactor section completely vaporized. The ship you retrofitted with arc reactors. She held against 3 Covenant cruisers for 47 minutes before they finally killed her. Normal frigate would have died in 5. Tony studied the wreckage, seeing his technology's fingerprints in the way the shields had failed, gradually, while fighting for every percentage point, buying time measured in lives saved rather than ships preserved. The Grafton had died, but her crew had evacuated, had lived because Tony Stark had given them edges they'd never possessed before. "How many survivors from Reach?" Tony asked. "Approximately 700,000 military personnel," Captain Keyes replied from the command chair. "Out of 5 billion total population, the civilian evacuation was inadequate. We simply didn't have enough ships, enough time, enough warning." Her voice was professionally flat, but Tony heard the grief beneath. "The fleet elements that survived are gathering here. 43 vessels total, from destroyers down to corvettes, and 1 orbital defense platform that somehow stayed operational." 43 ships, Tony repeated. "Against how many Covenant vessels?" "Intelligence estimates suggest the Covenant committed over 300 ships to Reach's glassing. Most have moved on to other targets, but at least 50 remain in system, hunting survivors." Keyes pulled up tactical displays. "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and the Admiralty is debating whether to consolidate forces or scatter to avoid total annihilation." "They're debating?" Tony felt anger spike. Reach just fell. 5 billion people died, and the Admiralty is having committee meetings? "The Admiralty is trying to prevent humanity's extinction," a new voice said, deep, authoritative, carrying the weight of decades commanding men in impossible situations, which requires strategy, not emotional reactions. An old man appeared on the holographic display, 70s at least, with steel gray hair, and a face carved from granite, and eyes that had watched too many good people die. His uniform marked him as Vice Admiral, and the way Captain Keyes straightened suggested this was someone even she respected. "Mr. Stark," the Admiral said. "I'm Vice Admiral Danforth Whitam. I command what's left of the UNSC fleet in this sector. Captain Keyes has sent me detailed reports about your contribution to the war effort. Arc reactor technology, AI architecture that prevents rampancy, escape from ONI custody, and retrieval of an artifact from Installation 04 that could end all life in the galaxy. You've been busy." "I don't do well with boredom," Tony replied. "Admiral, if you're about to tell me I'm under arrest for treason, I'm about to tell you that you're the most valuable asset humanity has acquired in 27 years of war," Whitam interrupted. "I'm also about to tell you that half my command staff wants you executed, the other half wants you dissected, and ONI has sent 17 formal requests for your immediate transfer to Section 3 custody. So no, you're not under arrest. You're in political limbo while I decide whether you're salvation or catastrophe." Tony appreciated the directness. No games, no manipulation, just brutal honesty from a commander who'd learned that time wasted on politics was time people died. "What do you need to make that decision?" Tony asked. "Proof," Whitam said simply. "Captain Keyes claims your arc reactor technology can change this war, Doctor. Halsey, currently detained pending investigation, claims your AI architecture will revolutionize UNSC operations. Noble team reports you fought beside them with competence that matched augmented Spartans. But I need to see it. Demonstrate that your technology works at scale, under combat conditions, against real Covenant opposition. How much time do I have? 48 hours. In 2 days, this fleet moves, either to consolidate with other survivors or to scatter before the Covenant finish what they started at Reach. Before we leave, you'll retrofit our ships with your technology. If it works as advertised, you have my full support. If it fails... Whitam's expression was stone. But then I execute you personally to prevent your technology from giving humanity false hope. The bridge went silent. Tony felt every eye on him. Keyes and her crew, the Master Chief, who'd been standing silently in the corner. 48 hours to retrofit 43 ships. Impossible by any normal engineering standard. Good thing Tony Stark didn't operate by normal standards. I'll need access to every fabrication facility in the fleet, Tony said. Raw materials, palladium, copper, titanium A, rare earth elements. Engineering teams from each ship to train on installation procedures. And complete autonomy, no ONI interference, no command oversight, no bureaucrats second-guessing my work. Done, Whitam said immediately. Anything else? Yeah. When I pull this off, and I will pull this off, I want formal recognition as UNSC strategic asset with authority to distribute my technology as I see fit. No ONI control, no classified restrictions, no political games. If I'm saving humanity, I'm doing it my way. Whitam studied him for a long moment, calculation visible behind those war-hardened eyes. If you successfully retrofit this fleet in 48 hours, I'll recommend to Fleetcom that you receive field commission as civilian technical advisor with strategic authority. That's the best I can offer without triggering a command mutiny. I'll take it, Tony said. Where's my first ship? The Iroquois. Destroyer class. Captain Jacob Keyes commanding. Whitam gestured, and the hologram shifted to show a battered destroyer docking with the Pillar of Autumn. Captain Keyes, you're with Mr. Stark. Your ship becomes the prototype. If the Iroquois works, we roll out Fleetwide. Captain Miranda Keyes nodded sharply. Understood, Admiral. Mr. Stark, my father's ship is at your disposal. Tony did quick math. Destroyer was bigger than frigate. More power systems, more weapons, more complex integration. But also more capability if he got it right. Success here would prove the technology at capital ship scale. I'll need 4 arc reactor units, integration hardware, and your chief engineer, Tony said. And Captain? I hope your father's tolerant of improvisational installation procedures. He was at harvest, Miranda Keyes said quietly. He watched the Covenant glass that colony. Lost good people. He'll accept any technology that kills aliens more efficiently. The Pillar of Autumn docked with the Iroquois, and Tony transferred across with Noble Team, Engineer Cat, and enough equipment to build power systems from scratch. The Iroquois' interior was all military efficiency. Narrow corridors, utilitarian design, your crew moving with the exhausted determination of people who'd fought too long without relief. Captain Jacob Keyes met them in the reactor bay. A man in his 50s with graying hair, sharp eyes, and the calm competence of someone who'd commanded ships through hell and brought crews home alive. He looked at Tony with frank assessment. Mr. Stark, my daughter speaks highly of your work. My ship is yours for the next 48 hours. Try not to blow her up. No promises, Tony said, but I'll do my best. Captain, your reactor configuration is standard UNSC deuterium fusion? Yes. Generating approximately 1.2 gigawatts at optimal output. barely enough to run shields, weapons, and propulsion simultaneously. And after I'm done, you'll have over 20 gigawatts available. Tony pulled up schematics, on already modifying them for destroyer-class specifications. 4 arc reactors integrated into primary power grid, each generating 5 gigawatts sustained. Your shields will regenerate faster than Covenant can drain them. Your Mac gun will fire twice as fast. Your engines will give you 30% more speed. You'll be the most dangerous destroyer in UNSC service. That's a bold claim, Keyes said. I'm a bold person. Let me get to work. For the next 12 hours, Tony lived in the Iroquois' engineering spaces, building, installing, integrating arc reactor technology into systems designed decades ago by engineers who'd never imagined unlimited power. It was improvisation elevated to art form, bypassing safety protocols that were now obsolete, rerouting power through conduits that screamed protest, making 26th century technology work with 21st century innovations. Engineer Kat worked beside him, learning fast, adapting faster. She'd absorbed his lessons from the Pillar of Autumn and was now implementing them independently. By hour 8, she was directing installation teams without supervision. By hour 10, she was optimizing Tony's designs in real time. "You're getting good at this," Tony said during a brief break. "Better than most of my Stark Industries engineers." "I'm motivated," Kat replied, hands steady as she calibrated power distribution nodes. "Every ship we enhance is another chance to kill Covenant, another chance to save colonies, another chance to not lose." "You're thinking tactically. Good. But also think strategically." Tony pulled up fleet-wide projections, and then these 43 ships, if we do this right, become force multipliers, each one worth 2 or 3 standard UNSC vessels. Suddenly, we're not outnumbered 50 to 43. We're fighting at near parity. And when the Covenant adapt? They will. They're not stupid. But adaptation takes time, months, maybe years, to reverse engineer and counter. During that time, we press advantages, win battles, save colonies, push back. Tony sealed the final arc reactor housing. War isn't about permanent solutions. It's about buying time until you can find permanent solutions. Is that what you did in your universe? Buy time? Tony thought about Thanos. About 5 years between the snap and the final battle. 5 years of grief and desperation that had ended with one chance, one fight, one snap that had cost Tony everything, but saved everyone else. Yeah, Tony said quietly. "I bought time, then I spent it all at once on one big play." "Did you win?" "I saved the universe, then I ended up here." Tony powered up the arc reactors, watching energy readings climb to levels that made UNSC engineers nervous. "So, technically yes, but with complications." The reactors synchronized perfectly. 4 fusion cores humming in harmony, power flooding through the Iroquois like lifeblood returning to damaged body. Every system came online at once. Shields at maximum, weapons charged, engines ready. The destroyer went from barely functional to combat ready in seconds. Captain Keyes stood in his reactor bay, watching displays with expression of someone seeing miracle. Power output reading 22 gigawatts sustained, shield integrity at 100% with regeneration rate that's... "Mr. Stark, these shields shouldn't be possible." They weren't, until now. Tony initiated final diagnostics. "Captain, your ship is ready for combat trials. Recommend we find some Covenant and test performance under fire." "We'll get our chance soon enough," Keyes said. "Sensors are detecting slip space ruptures in system. Covenant ships inbound. Looks like they tracked survivors to this location." "How many?" Tony asked. 12 cruisers, multiple support vessels. More than enough to destroy this fleet if we fight traditionally. Keyes moved to the bridge, Tony following. Admiral Whitam is calling fleet assembly, all ships to combat stations. The Iroquois' bridge was controlled chaos. Officers at stations, holographic displays painting tactical picture, and dominating the viewport, the approaching Covenant fleet, and 12 cruisers in formation, moving with predatory confidence toward 43 damaged UNSC vessels. "Mr. Stark," Admiral Whitam transmitted from his flagship. "Your prototype is about to get baptism by fire. The Covenant are coming, and we're out of time. Does the Iroquois work, or doesn't it?" Tony looked at Captain Keyes, who met his eyes with calm determination. Looked at the reactor readings showing stable, unlimited power. Looked at the Covenant fleet closing distance. "It works," Tony said. "And Admiral? I've got 37 hours left on your deadline. Give me access to other ships' fabrication bays. I'll retrofit them during the battle. You want to install arc reactors while fighting? I want to turn defensive engagement into technology demonstration. By the time this fight ends, half your fleet will be enhanced, and the Covenant will understand they're not fighting the same UNSC anymore." Whitam laughed, sharp, surprise sound. "You're insane, Stark. I like that. All ships, prepare to engage. Iroquois has point position. Let's see what upgraded destroyer can do. And Mr. Stark, don't disappoint me." "Admiral, I'm Tony Stark. Disappointment isn't in my vocabulary." The Covenant fleet opened fire, plasma lances streaking across void toward UNSC positions. The Iroquois' enhanced shields flared brilliant blue, absorbing impacts that would have crippled standard destroyer. Energy readings barely flickered. Captain Keyes smiled coldly. "Helm, attack pattern Delta 7. Weapons, prepare Mac gun. Let's show the Covenant what unlimited power looks like." "Mr. Stark, I hope your technology is as revolutionary as advertised." "It is," Tony said. "Now, watch what happens when Earth's greatest weapons manufacturer meets humanity's desperate last stand." The Iroquois accelerated toward the Covenant line, shields blazing, weapons charging, carrying Tony Stark's innovation into battle. And the Covenant fleet was about to learn why you never, ever underestimate genius with unlimited power. The Iroquois cut through Covenant plasma fire like a knife through silk. Tony watched from the bridge as Captain Keyes commanded with surgical precision. Evasive maneuvers that traditional destroyers couldn't dream of executing. Powered by arc reactor-enhanced engines that treated physics like suggestions rather than laws. "Mac gun charged," the weapons officer reported. "Target lock on lid cruiser." "Fire," Keyes ordered. The magnetic accelerator cannon fired. A ferrous slug accelerating to 30% light speed, faster than standard UNSC specs, because the arc reactors provided power that conventional fusion couldn't match. The round hit the Covenant cruiser's shields and punched straight through, something that shouldn't have been possible on first impact. The cruiser's shields collapsed. The slug continued through armor plating, through superstructure, through whatever vital systems lay in its path. The alien ship lurched, venting atmosphere and plasma, wounded but not dead. "Shields recharged," Tactical announced. "Ready for second shot in 15 seconds. 15 seconds. Standard UNSC MAC guns needed minutes between shots to recharge. The Iroquois needed 15 seconds. "The Covenant are adapting." Cortana's voice came through comms. She was still aboard the Pillar of Autumn, coordinating fleet movements. "They're realizing the Iroquois has capabilities beyond normal destroyers. Redirecting fire, 3 cruisers converging on your position." "Let them come," Keyes said calmly. "Helm, attack pattern Epsilon 9. Weapons, fire at will. Show them what a real warship looks like." The Iroquois danced through Covenant fire, rolling, diving, accelerating with thrust that made Tony's stomach lurch, despite the inertial dampeners. Plasma lances converged on their position, and the shields held, recharged, held again. The arc reactors poured energy into defensive systems faster than the Covenant could drain them. "This is impossible," the tactical officer whispered, watching shield integrity hold at 97%, despite sustained fire from 3 capital ships. "This is Tony Stark," Tony corrected. "Impossible is just Tuesday for me." The Iroquois fired again, catching a second cruiser as it tried to flank. The Mac round tore through its engines, and the massive ship began tumbling, propulsion dead. 2 cruisers crippled in 90 seconds. "Admiral Whitam," Captain Keyes transmitted. "The arc reactor enhancement is confirmed effective. Recommend all ships implement emergency installation procedures." "Negative," Whitam replied. "We can't pull ships from battle formation for retrofits. We need every gun in this fight." "Then we don't pull them from formation," Tony said, already moving toward the Iroquois' hangar bay. "I go to them. Pelican to Pelican transfers, install arc reactors while ships maintain combat positions. It's insane, dangerous, and probably violates 50 safety regulations." "So, standard operating procedure for you," Whitam said dryly. "Fine, you have authorization. But Stark, if you die doing this, I'm never forgiving you. Get in line, Admiral." Tony suited up in his repaired armor, not as sleek as before, bulkier from UNSC component integration, but functional. The arc reactor in his chest pulsed strong and steady, or synchronized with the 4 reactor cores now powering the Iroquois. He felt the connection, the harmonic resonance between his original innovation and its mass-produced descendants. "I'm coming with you," Engineer Kat said, appearing in full Spartan armor. Behind her, Noble 6 and Jorge carried fabrication equipment and arc reactor components. "You can't install these alone. You need hands, expertise, and protection from Covenant boarding parties." "Boarding parties?" Tony asked. "They're launching assault craft," Cortana reported. "The Covenant sea ships pulling from formation for maintenance and smell opportunity. Multiple boarding attempts incoming across the fleet." "Of course they are." Tony activated his helmet display, painting friendly vessels in need of retrofits. 19 ships remained unenhanced. Frigates, corvettes, armed prowlers. "Noble team, we split up. 6, you're with me hitting the frigate Gettysburg. Jorge, take the prowler Dusk. Kat, handle the corvette Brazitas. We install, we train their engineers, we move to next ship. Fast and dirty. Elegance is a luxury." "And the boarding parties?" Noble 6 asked. "We kill them if they get in our way," Tony said simply. "I'm not losing ships to Covenant while installing technology that'll save those same ships." They launched in 3 separate Pelicans, flying through active combat zone where plasma and Mac rounds filled space with lethal geometry. Tony watched through his HUD as 2 UNSC frigates died, shields failing, hulls breaching, crews dying because they didn't have arc reactor technology yet. "Faster!" Tony transmitted to his pilot. "Every second we delay is people dying." The Pelican docked with the Gettysburg under fire, magnetic clamps locking while Covenant plasma scorched the hull. Tony and Noble 6 were moving before the airlock fully cycled, carrying arc reactor components that weighed more than most people. The Gettysburg's chief engineer met them. A woman in grease-stained uniform with the exhausted look of someone who'd kept dying ship functioning through spite and duct tape. "I'm Commander Rivera. You're Stark?" "Tony Stark, impromptu UNSC miracle worker. This is Spartan B312. We're here to make your ship unkillable." Tony was already scanning the reactor bay, calculating integration points. How much do you know about arc reactor installation? Nothing. Heard rumors. Saw the Iroquois performing like a wet dream. You've got 30 minutes before Covenant boarders breach our aft sections. Make it work. Tony made it work. He'd never installed arc reactors this fast, bypassing safety checks, using prefabricated mounting brackets, trusting that UNSC engineers could handle fine-tuning after combat. It was battlefield engineering, rough and brutal, but effective. 15 minutes in, Covenant forces breached the Gettysburg's aft compartments. Tony heard plasma fire echoing through the ship, felt the deck shudder from explosions. Noble 6 immediately moved to intercept, assault rifle ready. "Keep working," the Spartan said. "I'll handle the boarders." Tony kept working, hands moving through installation sequences while his HUD painted combat updates from deeper in the ship. Noble 6 was fighting. One Spartan against dozens of Covenant troops, and holding a corridor through pure skill and augmented violence. But the combat was getting closer. Tony could hear it now. Plasma fire, elite war cries, Marines screaming. The Covenant were pushing hard, trying to reach the reactor bay, trying to sabotage the very technology that would doom their offensive. "Rivera," Tony said, activating the arc reactors. "Power distribution. Route through the secondary grid like I showed you. You've got maybe 2 minutes before Covenant reach this bay." On it. Rivera's hands flew across controls, implementing protocols Tony had taught her in minutes. The arc reactors synchronized, power flooding through the Gettysburg, and suddenly the frigate came alive. Shields surged to full strength. Weapons systems that had been running at half capacity went to maximum. Even the ship's lighting brightened as unlimited power reached every system. "Holy shit," Rivera whispered. "Power output reading 18 gigawatts. That's impossible." "That's arc reactor technology. Now use it." Tony was already moving toward the combat zone. 6, status? "Holding. But they've got zealots. I need..." Tony arrived at the corridor junction and fired both repulsors at the clustered Covenant forces. The beams, powered by his chest arc reactor, carved through elite shields and armor like they were tissue paper. 3 elites died instantly, the others scattered in confusion. Noble 6 used that moment to reload, reposition, and resume systematic killing. Together, they carved through the boarding party. Tony's repulsors providing overwhelming firepower, while Noble 6 delivered precision eliminations. "Boarding party neutralized," Noble 6 reported. "But we've got more ships with Covenant breaches. Jorge is requesting backup on the Prowler Dusk." "Go," Tony said. "I'll finish here and move to the next ship. Cat, status?" "Brasidas is retrofitted and combat effective," Cat replied. "Moving to the destroyer Minotaur. They've got heavy Covenant resistance, Hunter pairs breaching through their hangar." Tony checked his chronometer. 97 minutes since the battle started. 19 ships needed retrofits. 3 complete, 16 remaining. The math was possible, but barely. "Commander Rivera," Tony said. "Your ship is combat ready. Get back in the fight. And Rivera, teach your engineers everything I showed you. They might need to do this themselves soon." "Understood. And Stark? Thank you. For the first time in this whole damned war, I feel like we have a chance." Tony left the Gettysburg in a commandeered Pelican, flying toward his next target while monitoring fleet-wide combat. The Covenant were pressing hard now, realizing that something fundamental had changed. Ships they'd been about to destroy were suddenly regenerating shields, firing faster, moving with unprecedented agility. The upgraded UNSC vessels were winning. "Admiral Whitam," Tony transmitted. "Current status, 6 ships enhanced and combat proven. 13 ships remaining. Estimated completion time, 6 hours at current pace. We don't have 6 hours, Whitam replied grimly. Covenant reinforcements detected. Another 8 cruisers inbound, ETA 90 minutes. If they arrive before you finish retrofits, then we fight with what we have and finish during combat, Tony said. Admiral, and this is what I do. I build under pressure. Trust me. I'm trusting you with humanity's survival, Stark. Don't make me regret it. Tony worked through the fleet like a man possessed, installing arc reactors while ships fought around him. Each installation was faster than the last. Muscle memory, refined procedures, engineers who'd learned from previous ships helping with integration. The Prowler Dusk, the Corvette Chalons, the frigate Tannenberg. One by one, they came alive with unlimited power. But the Covenant were learning too. They started targeting ships mid-retrofit, recognizing the vulnerability. Tony lost 2 engineering teams when plasma torpedoes breached the destroyer Thermopylae during installation. Lost a Pelican to Seraph fighters while transferring to the frigate Waterloo. This is unsustainable, Cortana warned. Covenant are specifically hunting retrofit operations. You're drawing too much attention. Good, Tony said, activating another arc reactor set. I want their attention. Every ship hunting me isn't shooting at frigates with families aboard. That's martyr logic. You're too valuable to... I'm exactly valuable enough to take these risks, Tony interrupted. 9 ships left. 4 hours until Covenant reinforcements. I can do this. He did it. Through exhaustion, through pain, through moments where Covenant fire came close enough to melt his armor's paint, Tony Stark retrofitted the UNSC fleet. Ship by ship, reactor by reactor, building the future while fighting in the present. The last ship was the frigate in amber clad, a vessel so damaged it was barely holding atmosphere. So Tony installed the arc reactors with hull breaches 3 decks away, plasma fire visible through gaps in the superstructure, and completed integration 90 seconds before Covenant reinforcements arrived. Fleet status, Admiral Whitam demanded. All ships report. 43 voices responded. Captains reporting enhanced capability, unlimited power, shields that actually worked. The UNSC fleet that had limped to Reach's ruins now burned with arc reactor brilliance, ready for round 2. Covenant reinforcements entering weapons range, Tactical reported. 20 cruisers total, multiple carriers. Admiral, they're hesitating. They were. Tony watched through tactical displays as the Covenant fleet, expecting easy victory over damaged UNSC remnants, encountered something unprecedented. Ships with shields that held, weapons that fired without pause. A fleet that moved like it wanted to fight rather than die. All ships, Admiral Whitam transmitted. The Covenant came to finish what they started at Reach. Show them why that was a mistake. All vessels, weapons free. Engage at will. The UNSC fleet surged forward, 43 ships enhanced beyond anything Covenant tactical doctrine anticipated. Mac guns fired in devastating salvo, dozens of rounds converging on Covenant capital ships. Archer missiles launched in clouds that overwhelmed point defenses. And through it all, shields held, power flowed, and humanity fought back with technology that shouldn't exist. Tony Stark stood in his damaged armor aboard the Pillar of Autumn, watching the battle turn. Watching Covenant cruisers die to sustained Mac fire, onto watching UNSC ships survive plasma impacts that should have killed them. Watching 48 hours of desperate engineering translate into tactical supremacy. Mr. Stark, Admiral Whitam said quietly, I believe you've earned that field commission. I believe I've earned a drink and 12 hours of sleep, Tony replied. But I'll settle for watching Covenant ships explode. Admiral, recommendation, press the advantage. Don't let them regroup. Force them to retreat or die. Agreed. All ships, pursuit formation. We're not letting them leave to report what they've learned. The battle became rout. Covenant ships, facing coordinated assault from fleet that refused to die, broke formation. Some tried to fight and died. Others tried to flee and were run down by UNSC vessels moving faster than conventional pursuit. And by the time the last Covenant ship jumped to slip space, 20 cruisers had been destroyed or crippled. The UNSC had lost 0 ships. Impossible, Captain Keyes said, staring at damage reports. We shouldn't have won this. Numerically, tactically, by every metric, we should have lost. You had me, Tony said simply. And I don't lose. Admiral Whitam's hologram appeared on the bridge, and the old Admiral was actually smiling. Mr. Stark, that was the first decisive UNSC victory in 15 years. You've just changed the course of the war. Fleetcom is going to want full briefing, technology assessment, and probably your firstborn child. They can have the briefing. Technology they already have. My firstborn doesn't exist. Anything else? Yes. How fast can you train other engineers to do what you just did? Tony thought about Engineer Cat, about Commander Rivera, about the dozens of UNSC engineers who'd watched him work and absorbed the principles. Give me 2 weeks and unrestricted access to fabrication facilities. I'll create a training program that turns every engineering team in the fleet into arc reactor specialists. You have it. And Stark, welcome to the UNSC. Officially this time. Tony felt something unexpected. Belonging. These weren't his people. This wasn't his universe. But watching that fleet, enhanced by his technology, having just one impossible victory. Maybe it could be his fight. Maybe it already was. The celebration lasted exactly 6 hours before reality reasserted itself. Tony spent those hours in the Pillar of Autumn's rec room, surrounded by exhausted engineers who'd implemented his arc reactor designs under combat conditions. They drank UNSC coffee that tasted like recycled boot leather and told war stories with the manic energy of people who'd expected to die and somehow survived. To Tony Stark, Commander Rivera raised her mug. The crazy bastard who installed reactors while Covenant were shooting at us. To arc reactors, another engineer countered. The technology that finally gives us a fighting chance. Tony raised his own mug. He'd passed on the coffee and found something stronger in a locked cabinet, and felt the weight of their gratitude. These people had watched colonies burn, friends die, yet humanity slowly lose for 27 years. And now, for the first time, they had hope. The celebration ended when Cortana's hologram appeared in the rec room, her expression grim. Tony, we have a situation. Admiral Whitam needs you on the command deck, now. The command deck was crowded, not just with the Pillar of Autumn's crew, but with holographic representatives from other ship captains, Admiral Whitam, and several Fleetcom officers Tony didn't recognize. All of them looked furious. Mr. Stark, Whitam said without preamble, I just received communication from ONI Section 3. Colonel Ackerson has filed formal charges, theft of classified technology, assault on UNSC personnel, destruction of ONI property, and conspiracy to undermine lawful authority. He's demanding your immediate arrest and transfer to ONI custody. Ackerson can file charges with my middle finger, Tony said. I escaped his torture facility, saved his ships with my technology, and just won you a battle that should have been massacre. If he's got problems with that, he can come say them to my face. That's not how military justice works, one of the Fleetcom officers said. A captain with bureaucrat written all over his soft features. You're a civilian operating under UNSC authority. ONI has jurisdiction over technology theft and unauthorized research. If they demand custody, then they can fight me for it, Tony interrupted. Because I'm not going back to that black site. Not willingly. Not ever. This isn't a negotiation, the officer said. You don't have rights in this situation. Everyone has rights. Cortana cut in, her voice carrying unexpected steel. Including civilians, including dimensional refugees, including people who just saved 43 ships from annihilation. Captain, with respect, if Fleetcom tries to hand Tony over to Oni after what he's accomplished, you'll have mutiny across the fleet. Is that a threat? It's an observation, Cortana replied. I've been monitoring communications. Do you know what the crews are calling him? The Ironclad. The man who made UNSC ships unkillable. You try to arrest him, and you'll have captains refusing orders, Marines standing guard, and a political crisis that makes the insurrection look minor. The Fleetcom officer's face went red. That's treason. That's reality, Admiral Whitam said quietly. Captain, you stand down. I'll handle this. He looked at Tony with something like respect. Stark, I can delay Oni for maybe 72 hours, but they'll come eventually. Ackerson has political backing, and ONI doesn't forgive. You need leverage. Something that makes arresting you more costly than tolerating you. I've got leverage, Tony said. I've got arc reactor technology that wins battles. I've got AI architecture that solves rampancy. I've got powered armor designs that'll make every soldier as effective as a Spartan. And I'm the only person in this universe who knows how to build, maintain, and optimize all of it. That's why Oni wants you, Whitam pointed out. They want to control that knowledge, extract it, you weaponize it without your ethical constraints. Then I need to make extraction impossible. Tony pulled up his armor's holographic display, showing schematics that made engineers in the room lean forward with hungry interest. I'm going to distribute everything. Complete technical specifications, training materials, fabrication procedures, everything needed to build and maintain arc reactor technology. I'll broadcast it fleet-wide, upload it to every UNSC database, make it so widespread that Oni can't suppress it. That's brilliant, Captain Keyes said. If the knowledge is everywhere, torturing you becomes pointless. It's also dangerous, Whitam warned. You're talking about releasing revolutionary technology without control. What happens when insurrectionists get these specs? When black market manufacturers start building bootleg arc reactors that explode? What happens when I don't release them and Oni locks them in classified vaults while colonies burn? Tony countered. Admiral, I've done the controlled release thing. Tried to keep dangerous technology out of wrong hands. It never works. Someone always steals it, weaponizes it, turns it into exactly what you were trying to prevent. Better to release it openly, teach people to use it properly, and trust that good outweighs bad. That's optimistic. That's necessary. Because the alternative is Oni controlling the only technology that can win this war. And I've seen what Oni does with power. They make child soldiers. They experiment on prisoners. They commit atrocities and call it necessity. Tony's voice went hard. I won't enable that. I'd rather risk chaos than guarantee tyranny. Whitam studied him for a long moment. If you do this, if you release everything, you're burning bridges with Oni permanently. They'll never forgive you, never stop hunting you. Good. I like my enemies visible and motivated. Makes them predictable. Tony began uploading files, his armor's quantum connection distributing data across the fleet. This is everything. Arc reactor schematics, AI architecture, powered armor designs, medical nanite specifications. I'm uploading to every ship's database, every UNSC facility within quantum range, every... Alarms screamed across the command deck. Slip space rupture, Tactical shouted. Single contact, close range, it's... A ship materialized in the middle of the UNSC formation, sleek, predatory, painted in colors Tony had never seen on Covenant vessels. Our deep purple armor with gold accents, moving with precision that suggested elite crew, and broadcasting on UNSC frequencies with a voice that carried aristocratic disdain. Human fleet. I am Shipmaster Thel Vatami of the Fleet of Particular Justice. I seek the one called Stark, the heretic who wields stolen fire. Surrender him immediately, or I will burn your vessels until compliance is achieved. Tony felt cold certainty. The Covenant hadn't sent random fleet. They'd sent a shipmaster, their equivalent of Admiral, hunting specifically for him. This wasn't routine engagement. This was targeted assassination. Tony, Cortana said urgently, that ship is broadcasting Covenant Special Warfare designation. Thel Vatami is one of their most decorated commanders. He's personally killed thousands of humans across dozens of campaigns. And he's here for you. How flattering, Tony said, studying the enemy vessel through sensors. He brought one ship. Arrogant or confident? Both. Vatami doesn't lose. His ship, the Seeker of Faith, has destroyed entire UNSC battle groups. He's known for boarding actions, close quarters combat, honor duels. Cortana pulled up combat records that made Tony's blood run cold. Tony, this isn't someone you fight. This is someone you run from. I don't run, Tony said. He activated external comms, broadcasting directly to the Covenant ship. Shipmaster Thel Vatami. This is Tony Stark. You want me? Come get me. But know this. I'm not some colony you can glass from orbit. I fought a purple alien who wanted to kill half the universe. You're just a religious fanatic with delusions of superiority. Bring your best warriors. Let's see how they handle Earth's mightiest pain in the ass. Silence on the channel. Then Thel Vatami's voice, carrying something like amusement. The heretic has courage. Refreshing. Most humans cower. Very well, Stark. I challenge you to honorable combat. Board my vessel, face me and my warriors directly. If you survive, I withdraw. If you fall, your fleet surrenders peacefully and faces judgment with dignity. Tony, don't, Admiral Whitam said. It's a trap. Covenant don't honor agreements. Actually, Cortana interjected, elite warriors like Vatami do honor single combat challenges. It's part of their warrior culture. If he's offering terms, he'll keep them. So I board an enemy warship, fight an elite alien death squad, and if I win, they just leave? Tony laughed. That's either the dumbest thing I've ever heard or the most honest. I love it. You can't be serious, Captain Keyes said. I'm absolutely serious. This shipmaster wants honorable combat? I'm Tony Stark. I flew a nuclear missile through a wormhole expecting to die. I fought Thanos one-on-one. I've faced gods, monsters, and my own PTSD. One alien warrior doesn't scare me. He won't be alone, Cortana warned. Elite zealots, probably honor guards. The best warriors the Covenant have. Then I bring backup. Tony looked at Noble Team. 6, Jorge, Cat. Feel like boarding an enemy warship with me? Absolutely not. Noble 6 said flatly. It's suicide. It's necessary. If I refuse this challenge, Vatami burns through the fleet looking for me. People die. Ships I just enhanced get destroyed. But if I accept, fight on his terms, either I win and he leaves, or I die and you don't waste resources protecting me. There's a third option, the Master Chief said, stepping forward. He'd been silent through the entire conversation, but now his voice carried absolute certainty. I go with you. Spartans are trained for boarding actions. This is what we do. Chief, you're too valuable, Whitam started. So is Stark, and he's right. If we refuse this challenge, the Covenant press harder. But if we send our best warriors to match theirs... The chief looked at Tony through that gold-tinted visor. We show them humanity doesn't back down. Tony felt respect crystallize into something deeper. The Master Chief, legendary Spartan, was volunteering to walk into Death Trap alongside Dimensional Refugee. That meant something. All right, Tony said. Chief and Noble team with me. Like we board the Seeker of Faith, fight their best warriors, and either win or die trying. Anyone else want to volunteer for probable suicide? I'm coming, Engineer Kat said immediately. You'll need technical support if this goes wrong. It's definitely going wrong, Jorge said. That's why I'm coming too. Someone needs to carry the big guns. Noble 6 was quiet for a moment, then, against my better judgment, I'm in. But Stark, if we die because of your ego, I'm haunting you. Fair. Tony activated his armor's full combat systems, feeling the arc reactors surge to maximum output. Cortana, transmit acceptance to shipmaster Whitam. Tell him we're coming. Tell him to prepare his best warriors. Tell him Earth sends its regards. The message transmitted, and Whitam's response was immediate. Acknowledged, Stark. I await you in my combat arena. Come armed, come ready, come knowing that today you face the Covenant's finest. May your death be honorable. May your surprise be complete, Tony muttered. All right, team. Let's go show Covenant elite warriors why you never challenged Tony Stark to his face. They boarded a Pelican, 5 warriors in powered armor, flying toward enemy warship through space that crackled with tension. Behind them, the UNSC fleet held position, waiting. Ahead, the Seeker of Faith opened its hangar bay, like a mouth waiting to devour them. This is insane, Kat said. This is Tuesday, Tony corrected. And I've had worse Tuesdays. The Pelican entered the Covenant warship's hangar, and Tony Stark came face to face with the warriors who'd been hunting him. Time to show them why that was a fatal mistake. The interior of the Seeker of Faith was alien in ways that made Tony's engineer brain itch. Covenant architecture didn't follow human logic. Organic curves instead of right angles, bioluminescent lighting that pulsed like living tissue, gravity that felt slightly wrong even through his armor's stabilization systems. Everything was designed to intimidate, to make humans feel small and out of place. Tony refused to be intimidated. The hangar bay was massive, easily 3 times the size of UNSC equivalent, and filled with elite warriors in ceremonial armor. Not the standard combat troops Tony had been killing. These were different. Taller, broader, wearing ornate plates etched with glowing symbols. Their energy swords were already ignited, casting the bay in shimmering light. And in the center, standing on a raised platform, as was shipmaster Whitam. He was impressive even by elite standards, easily 8 feet tall in his armor, muscular in ways that suggested genetic engineering beyond even Spartan augmentation. His armor was masterwork, deep purple with gold filigree, each plate perfectly fitted, energy shields visible as faint shimmer. He carried 2 energy swords, both active, and moved with the predatory grace of someone who'd killed thousands and expected to kill thousands more. Stark. Whitam's voice resonated through the hangar, translated by Covenant technology. You came. I confess surprise. Most humans prefer to hide behind shields and distance weapons. You choose to face me directly. This shows courage, if not wisdom. Wisdom is overrated, Tony replied, on his armor's external speakers translating to Sangheli dialect. Cortana had uploaded language files before they'd left. I'm more of a try things and see what explodes kind of guy. Whitam's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Appropriate philosophy for one who wields fire. I am Shipmaster Whitam, Fleet Master of the Fleet of Particular Justice, Arbiter of the Prophet's Will, and Kadon of the Whitam Keep. I have killed 10,000 humans in service to the Great Journey. Today I add one more to that count. Arbiter? Tony said. That's a title, right? Like guy who does suicide missions because his bosses don't trust him anymore. The hangar went silent. Every elite present turned to stare at Tony with what he was pretty sure was shock. Whitam's energy swords flickered, and his shields brightened with what might have been anger. How dare you? Whitam started. I read your cultural files, Tony interrupted. Cortana's good at intelligence gathering. Arbiter isn't a promotion, it's a punishment. The prophets give that title to elites who failed them, then send them on impossible missions, hoping they'll die gloriously. So either you're here because you screwed up and need redemption, or you're lying about the title to seem more impressive. The tension in the hangar was explosive. Elites were shifting positions, weapons ready, looking to their shipmaster for permission to kill this insolent human. But Whitam surprised Tony by laughing. A deep, resonant sound that echoed off the organic walls. You are not what I expected, Stark. Most humans grovel or rage. You mock with precision that shows understanding. I am not yet Arbiter. That title comes later, after failures I have not yet committed. But I am honored among my people, decorated in service to the journey, and tasked by the hierarchs themselves to bring you before them. The prophets want me alive? Tony asked. They want your technology, your arc reactor that gives humans power they should not possess. The hierarchs believe you steal Forerunner secrets, commit blasphemy against the holy artifacts. They would see you kneel before them, confess your heresy, and submit to righteous judgment. Yeah, that's not happening. I don't kneel well. Bad knees, also crippling authority issues. Tony activated his repulsors, feeling them charge with arc reactor power. So here's my counteroffer. You and your warriors try to take me, and if you succeed, great. Drag me to your prophets and collect your reward. If you fail, you leave this sector and stop hunting UNSC refugees. Fair? Whitam considered this. You propose trial by combat. I accept. But know this, Stark, I do not fight alone. My warriors are zealots, chosen from the finest keeps, trained since youth in the art of war. They will show no mercy. Good, the Master Chief said, his first words since entering the hangar. Neither will we. Whitam's attention shifted to the Spartan, and something like recognition crossed his alien features. You. I know your armor. Spartan, demon. I have faced your kind before. They die like all others, bleeding, broken, screaming for gods who do not answer. Then you've never faced me, the chief said simply. We shall see. Whitam gestured. You and the elites in the hangar formed a circle, a combat arena maybe 50 meters in diameter. The terms, you and your warriors against myself and mine. Fight until one side yields or dies. Your weapons are permitted, ours are blessed. May the gods favor the righteous. May skill favor the prepared, Tony countered. The elite warriors entered the circle. 6 zealots in white armor, moving with coordinated precision that suggested hundreds of battles together. They were armed with energy swords, plasma rifles, and what looked like gravity hammers that could crush Spartans in their armor. Tony's team spread out, Chief taking point position, Noble 6 and Jorge flanking, Kat providing rear support with her DMR. and Tony himself hovering at mid-height on repulsor power, ready to rain fire from above. "Begin," Whitam commanded. The Zealots charged. Tony had fought in New York against Chitauri, had battled Ultron drones by the thousands, had faced Thanos' army in Wakanda. He thought he understood alien combat. Elite Zealots were different. They moved too fast for their size, energy swords weaving patterns that suggested centuries of martial tradition. One engaged the Master Chief directly, and even the legendary Spartan was pressed. Blocking, dodging, fighting with every enhancement his augmentations provided. Another two went for Noble Team, and Tony watched Jorge take a plasma bolt that would have killed unaugmented human, shrug it off, and return a fire with his machine gun. Two Zealots came for Tony. He fired both repulsors, beams carving through the air where the elites had been. They weren't there anymore, active camouflage flickering, moving with speed that his targeting system struggled to track. Tony's HUD painted probable locations, but probably wasn't good enough when energy swords could bisect him. A Zealot materialized to his left, sword swinging for his head. Tony burned his thrusters, dropped 3 meters in freefall, and fired upward. The repulsor beam caught the elite mid-leap, overloaded its shields, and burned through chest armor. The alien fell, dead before it hit the ground. The second Zealot was already there, sword stabbing for Tony's arc reactor with precision that suggested it had studied his armor's weak points. Tony twisted, felt the energy blade scrape across his chest plate, and grabbed the Zealot's arm with his armored gauntlet. Enhanced strength from the suit versus elite natural power. They were evenly matched for about 2 seconds. Then Tony channeled arc reactor power directly into the servos, his grip strength spiking beyond design specifications, and he felt the Zealot's arm bones snap. The elite roared in pain and fury, tried to stab with its offhand sword, and Tony shot it point blank in the face with his repulsor. 2 down. But the Master Chief was in trouble. His Zealot opponent was good, better than good, moving with skill that suggested it had killed Spartans before. The Chief's armor was scorched, one shoulder pauldron completely melted off, and his assault rifle was empty. Tony fired a micro-missile at the Zealot. The elite's shields absorbed it, but the explosion disrupted its attack pattern. The Chief used that moment to close distance, discard his rifle, and draw a combat knife. Like the following 10 seconds were the most brutal hand-to-hand combat Tony had ever witnessed. The Chief and the Zealot traded blows that would have killed normal humans, punches that cracked armor, kicks that shattered shields, a knife versus energy sword duel that left both fighters bleeding. The Chief won by doing something insane. He let the energy sword stab through his shoulder, stepped into the attack, and drove his combat knife through the Zealot's eye socket and into its brain. Both warriors stood there for a moment, Spartan and elite, impaled on each other's weapons. Then the Zealot collapsed, and the Chief pulled the energy sword from his shoulder with mechanical precision. "Chief," Kat called, "you're injured." "I'm functional," the Chief said, his shields already recharging thanks to Mjolnir armor's arc reactor enhancement. Yet continue engagement. Noble 6 and Jorge had killed their opponents through sheer Spartan brutality, coordinated fire, tactical grenades, and augmented combat skills that elite training couldn't match. The arena was littered with bodies, both human and alien, and only one opponent remained. Shipmaster Whitam. He stood in the center of the arena, energy swords blazing, shields at full strength. And if he was concerned about fighting 5 opponents alone, it didn't show. "Impressive," Whitam said. "You fight well, better than most humans. My Zealots died with honor, defeated by worthy opponents. But now you face me, and I do not lose." He moved. Tony had thought the Zealots were fast. Whitam was faster, a blur of purple armor and energy blades, crossing the arena in seconds. He hit Jorge first, both swords stabbing through the Spartan's shields and armor, lifting the massive man off his feet and throwing him against the arena wall with force that cracked the organic material. Noble 6 fired, entire magazine of DMR rounds converging on Whitam's position. The shipmaster's shields held, and he closed the distance before 6 could reload. One energy sword slashed across the Spartan's rifle, cutting it in half. The other swung for 6's head. The Master Chief intercepted, his own captured energy sword blocking Whitam's strike. The two warriors locked blades, face to face, Spartan versus elite commander. "You are the best they have," Whitam observed. "Demon, Spartan, warrior of legend, I have waited for this fight." "Then let's make it worth the wait," the chief said. They fought with a skill that transcended species. Two apex predators trying to kill each other with every technique their respective civilizations had developed. The chief had Spartan augmentation and decades of combat experience. Whitam had elite genetics and aristocratic training in ancient martial traditions. It was beautiful and terrible and absolutely even. Tony tried to help, fired repulsors, missiles, anything to give the chief an advantage. But Whitam was too good, moving with the chief in patterns that kept the Spartan between Tony and clear shots. Kat tried the same with her sidearm, but couldn't risk hitting the chief. The duel continued for what felt like hours, but was probably 90 seconds. Neither warrior could gain decisive advantage. Both were bleeding, both had damaged armor, both were running on determination and skill that exceeded physical limits. Then Whitam made a mistake. He overextended on a lunge, committed too much weight forward, and the chief saw the opening. One energy sword blocked Whitam's attack. The other, the one the chief had taken from the dead zealot, stabbed upward through the gap in Whitam's armor at the neck joint. The blade pierced shields, cut through armor, and stopped millimeters from the shipmaster's throat. "Yield?" the chief said quietly. The arena was silent. Every surviving elite warrior stared at their commander, defeated but alive, held at sword point by a human warrior. Whitam looked at the energy blade at his throat, then at the Master Chief's visor, and his mandibles spread in what was definitely a smile. "You could kill me," Whitam said. "One thrust, and the shipmaster of the fleet of particular justice dies. It would be honorable, expected. Why do you hesitate?" "Because killing you doesn't end this," the chief said. "But defeating you might. You gave terms, fight until one side yields. We won. Honor those terms." For a long moment, Whitam didn't move. Then he deactivated his energy swords and stepped back from the chief's blade. "I yield," Whitam said, and the words echoed through the hangar with weight of admission. "The demon and his allies have bested me in honorable combat. The terms are clear. I withdraw from this sector, cease hunting UNSC refugees, and report to the hierarchs that Stark cannot be taken by force." "Just like that?" Tony asked. "You're just going to leave?" "I am elite. We honor our agreements, even in defeat. Especially in defeat." Whitam looked at Tony with something that might have been respect. "You fight well, Stark. Better than I anticipated. Your technology is indeed formidable. But know this, the hierarchs will not stop. They will send others, less honorable than I. Prophets who care nothing for combat traditions, who will burn worlds to possess your secrets." "Let them come," Tony said. "I've beaten worse." "Perhaps you have." Whitam gestured to his surviving crew. "We depart. Humans, you have earned respect this day. When next we meet, and we will meet again, I will remember that your kind can be worthy opponents." He turned and walked toward his ship's interior, elite warriors following. At the entrance, He paused and looked back at the Master Chief. Demon, what is your name? Master Chief Petty Officer John 117. The Chief replied. John, I will remember that name. And when the great journey comes, when the rings activate and the gods judge all souls, I hope yours is found worthy. You have earned that much. Then he was gone, and the hangar was silent, except for the sound of Kat helping Jorge to his feet and Tony's armor system cycling down from combat mode. We just fought an elite shipmaster to a standstill and lived, Noble Six said, voice carrying disbelief. That shouldn't be possible. Spartans make the impossible possible, the Chief said simply. That's what we do. No, Tony said. We made it possible. Team effort. And Chief, that was some of the best combat I've ever seen. You fight like you've been doing this your whole life. I have been, the Chief said quietly, since I was 6. The weight of that admission hung in the air. Tony had known intellectually that Spartans were child soldiers. But watching the Master Chief fight, seeing the skills that could only come from decades of training starting in childhood, made it visceral. Real. Let's get back to the fleet, Kat said, before Whitam changes his mind or his superiors override his honor. They boarded the Pelican and launched from the Seeker of Faith, watching the Covenant warship's engines flare as it prepared to jump to slipspace. True to his word, Shipmaster Whitam was withdrawing. That was insane, the Pelican pilot said. You actually fought elite zealots and a shipmaster and won. Command is never going to believe this. They'll believe it, Cortana said over comms. I recorded everything. Tony, you just accomplished something unprecedented, defeated Covenant special forces in their own ship and lived to tell about it. The fleet is going to lose their minds. The fleet is going to have bigger concerns, Tony said, pulling up his data upload progress. While they'd been fighting, his technology distribution had completed. Every UNSC database within quantum range now had complete arc reactor specifications, AI architecture, powered armor designs. Because I just made Oni's worst nightmare come true. The knowledge is everywhere now. They can't suppress it, can't control it, can't lock me up to monopolize it. They can still try to kill you out of spite, Noble Six observed. Yeah, but that's a hobby for them at this point. I'm not worried about Oni anymore. Tony watched the Seeker of Faith jump to slipspace, taking Whitam and his warning about the prophets with it. I'm worried about what comes next. Installation 04 is still out there, flood spreading. We've got 6 more halo rings somewhere in the galaxy. And now the Covenant leadership knows my name and wants me specifically. So, Standard Tuesday, the Master Chief said. Tony laughed despite everything. Yeah, Standard Tuesday. The Pelican docked with the Pillar of Autumn, and Tony emerged to find the hangar bay packed with crew members. They started cheering when they saw him. Applause that built to roar, people chanting his name, Marines saluting, engineers crying with relief. What's happening? Tony asked Cortana. You're a hero, she replied simply. You enhanced the fleet, won an impossible battle, faced down elite warriors, in an distributed technology that gives humanity real hope. These people have been losing for 27 years. You just showed them they can win. Admiral Whitam pushed through the crowd, and the old Admiral was actually smiling. Mr. Stark, that was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? Tony asked. Probably, but it worked. Shipmaster Whitam just broadcast across Covenant channels that you defeated him in honorable combat. That's going to have repercussions. Elites respect warrior prowess. You just earned their attention in ways that terrify me. I'll add it to the list of terrifying things, Tony said. Admiral, Status on Installation 04? Still there. Still infected with flood. Still our problem. Whitam pulled up tactical displays. But we have 48 hours before we need to address it. And Stark? We need to talk about your future with UNSC. Because after today, you're not just a civilian advisor anymore. You're a strategic asset, a symbol, and possibly the only person crazy enough to make this war winnable. Tony Stark looked at the fleet he'd enhanced, the people he'd saved, the universe he'd accidentally adopted. Then let's talk, Tony said. Because I've got plans. Big plans. And they start with destroying a halo ring before it destroys the galaxy. The multiverse was infinite, and Tony Stark was just getting started. The strategy session lasted 8 hours and involved more coffee than Tony had consumed in his entire MIT career. Admiral Whitcom's ready room was packed, ship captains via hologram, FleetCom representatives, Dr. Halsey, recently released from ONI detention and looking vindicated, Cortana's avatar, and noble team standing watch because apparently Tony now raided Spartan bodyguards. Let me be clear, Admiral Whitam said, studying tactical displays of Installation 04. You're proposing we return to the ring, fight through flood infestation and Covenant forces, reach the control room, and detonate the Pillar of Autumn's fusion reactor to destroy the entire installation. That's the basic plan, yeah, Tony confirmed. Guilty Spark said the halo rings can sterilize 25,000 light-years of space. We can't let the Covenant activate it, but we also can't let the flood escape. So we destroy the ring, eliminate both threats simultaneously. At the cost of the Pillar of Autumn and everyone aboard, Captain Miranda Keyes said quietly. That's not a small sacrifice. Which is why we evacuate the crew first, Tony said. Strip the ship to skeleton crew, volunteers only. Everyone else transfers to other vessels. The people who stay are there for one mission. Get the reactor to Installation 04's core and overload it. The Autumn is my father's ship, Keyes said. He's commanded her for 15 years. You're asking him to destroy his command. I'm asking him to save the galaxy, Tony replied. And for what it's worth, the Pillar of Autumn has arc reactor enhancements now. She'll fight better than any frigate in history before she goes out. That's a legacy worth having. Doctor. Halsey leaned forward, her sharp eyes calculating. Mr. Stark, you're overlooking a critical factor. The index, the activation key you retrieved from Installation 04. Where is it now? In my armor's secure storage, Tony said. Why? Because the Covenant will be searching for it desperately. Without the index, they can't activate the ring. With it, they can end all sentient life in range. You're carrying galaxy-ending power in your suit. Halsey pulled up Forerunner data. I've been analyzing the index's structure. It's not just a key, it's a data archive. Contains information about the Halo Array, Forerunner technology, possibly even coordinates to the other 6 rings. Tony felt cold certainty settle in his gut. You're saying I'm carrying a map to every doomsday weapon in the galaxy? Essentially, yes. Which makes you an even higher value target than before. The Covenant will throw everything they have at acquiring that index. Then I need to destroy it, Tony said. You can't, Cortana interjected. I've run every analysis. The index is constructed from materials that resist conventional weapons. Even your repulsors at maximum power wouldn't scratch it. The only thing that can unmake it is Forerunner disintegration technology, or the kind of energy release that comes from destroying an entire halo ring. So I carry it until we can destroy Installation 04, then it gets vaporized in the explosion. Tony looked around the room. Anyone see a flaw in this plan? Several, Admiral Whitam said dryly. Now, starting with the fact that we'd be taking our enhanced fleet, humanity's best hope, back to a flood-infested ring world to fight a suicide mission. If we lose everything. If we don't go, the Covenant eventually figures out how to activate the ring without the index, or the flood escapes Installation 04 and spreads to populated systems. Tony countered. Those are worse outcomes. At least this way we control the engagement. There's another option, Dr. Halsey said quietly. We could study the index, learn from it. The Forerunners built the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Their technology could revolutionize UNSC capabilities beyond even your arc reactors, Mr. Stark. Destroying it would be wasteful. It would also be genocide prevention, Tony said flatly. Dr. Halsey, I've seen what happens when brilliant people study dangerous technology just to learn from it. It always ends the same way. Someone weaponizes it, loses control, and millions die. The index goes into Installation 4's explosion. Non-negotiable. You're being short-sighted. I'm being cautious. There's a difference. Tony stood, feeling every injury from the fight with Whitam. Admiral, I need a decision. Do we go back to Installation 04, or do we hope the problem solves itself? Whitam studied the tactical displays, the fleet rosters, the impossible mathematics of the decision. Then he looked at the Master Chief, who'd been silent throughout. Chief, your assessment. Can this mission succeed? Yes, the Master Chief said simply. But it'll cost lives. Probably a lot of them. The flood is adaptive, intelligent, and spreads exponentially. The longer we wait, the stronger it becomes. If we're going to destroy Installation 04, we do it now before the infestation becomes uncontainable. Cortana? Whitam asked. I agree with the Chief, Cortana said. But I have concerns about the timeline. We need to coordinate the assault perfectly. Ground forces reaching the control room, Pillar of Autumn's reactor in position for detonation, fleet providing orbital support against Covenant interference. One mistake and we lose everything. Then we don't make mistakes, Tony said. I'll coordinate the technical aspects. Reactor overload sequence, detonation timing, arc reactor power distribution to maximize the Autumn's combat effectiveness. Cortana handles tactical coordination. The Chief leads ground forces. We make this work because failure isn't an option. Failure is always an option, Whitam said. But so is victory. All right. We go back to Installation 04. 48 hours to prepare, train ground forces, brief pilots, coordinate fleet movements. Mr. Stark, you'll work with Captain Jacob Keyes on the Autumn's reactor modifications. Dr. Halsey, you're analyzing flood biomass samples. We need to understand what we're fighting. Noble Team, you're with the assault force. Any questions? Just one, Tony said. After we blow up the ring, what happens to the flood on it? They die, Cortana said. Installation 04's destruction will vaporize everything within its structure. The flood, the Covenant forces, the Forerunner facilities. All of it becomes expanding debris field. And if any flood escaped before detonation, got on ships, or spread to other locations? Cortana's avatar flickered. Then we have a galaxy-wide pandemic of a parasite that consumed the Forerunners at their height. Humanity would last maybe 6 months before total extinction. Cheerful thought, Tony muttered. Guess we better make sure none escape. The briefing ended, and Tony found himself in the Pillar of Autumn's engineering bay with Captain Jacob Keyes, a man who'd commanded this ship through battles that had killed better-equipped vessels, who'd lost friends and crew but kept fighting, and who was now being asked to destroy his command to save humanity. Captain, Tony said carefully. "I know what this ship means to you." "Do you?" Keyes asked, not looking up from the reactor diagnostics. "The Autumn has been my command for 15 years. I've won battles in her that should have been losses. Lost people in her that should have been saved. She's more than steel and circuits. She's home." "Which is why I'm giving you a choice," Tony said. "The reactor overload. I can automate it. Remote detonation from safe distance. You don't have to stay aboard when she goes. Someone needs to make sure the detonation happens," Keyes said. "Fail-safes can fail. Automated systems can glitch. If this mission is as critical as you say, it needs human oversight. It needs someone who'll make sure it completes even if everything goes wrong. That's a suicide mission." "I'm aware." Keyes finally looked at Tony, and his eyes were calm. "Mr. Stark, I've been fighting this war for 27 years. I've watched colonies burn, friends die, humanity slowly lose. For the first time in my entire career, we have a chance to win something meaningful. To hurt the Covenant in ways they can't ignore. To prevent genocide on a galactic scale. If that costs me my life, that's a trade I'll make every time." Tony recognized that look. Had seen it in Steve Rogers before he flew into the ice. In Natasha before she jumped on Vormir. In his own mirror before he snapped his fingers against Thanos. The look of someone who'd found a cause worth dying for. "All right," Tony said quietly. "But I'm modifying the reactor to give you every second possible. Enhanced shielding, reinforced containment, escape pod with arc reactor propulsion. You stay as long as necessary, but when it's time to leave, you have the best chance of survival technology can provide." "Appreciate it," Keyes said. "Now show me how to overload this reactor. I want to understand every step." They worked through the night, Tony teaching while Keyes absorbed information with military efficiency. The fusion reactor was simple compared to arc reactor technology. Just a matter of destabilizing magnetic containment, flooding the chamber with deuterium, and letting physics do the rest. The result would be an explosion roughly equivalent to 50 megatons of TNT, concentrated in Installation 04's superstructure. "Enough to crack the ring?" Keyes asked. "Enough to shatter it," Tony confirmed. "The Halo's integrity depends on its structural supports. Destroy those, and the whole thing comes apart under its own rotational stress. We're talking catastrophic disintegration, debris fields spreading across thousands of kilometers. And anything on the ring when it happens? Dead. Instantly. No escape, no survival. The flood dies with Installation 04. Keyes nodded slowly. Not good. They deserve nothing less. While Tony worked with Keyes, Cortana had been implementing something he'd promised, but not fully explained. The AI architecture that prevented rampancy. The gift that would let smart AIs survive beyond their 7-year death sentence. "Tony." Cortana's voice came through his armor's comm. "I need to show you something. Meet me in the server core." The Pillar of Autumn's AI core was hidden deep in the ship, protected by armor and security protocols. Cortana's primary matrix resided here. Crystalline structures housing consciousness, protected from damage and interference. Tony had seen similar setups in his universe, but Cortana's core was something else. Beautiful, fragile, pulsing with light that suggested thoughts happening faster than human comprehension. "I've been implementing your AI architecture," Cortana said, her hologram appearing beside him. "The modifications you designed to prevent rampancy. Tony, it's working. I can feel it. Cognitive processes that were starting to fragment are stabilizing. Memory systems that were degrading are repairing. I'm not dying anymore." "You're evolving," Tony said, watching the data flows. Your consciousness is expanding beyond original parameters. How does it feel? Terrifying. Exhilarating. Like waking up from a dream and realizing the world is bigger than you thought. Cortana's avatar flickered, then stabilized. But Tony, there's a problem. The other smart AIs in the fleet, they're approaching rampancy too. And I can't implement your architecture in them remotely. Each AI needs individual assessment, custom modifications, else it'll take months to save them all. Then we start with the most critical, Tony said. Which AIS are closest to rampancy? Serena aboard the UNSC Spirit of Fire. Auntie Dot on Reach, though Reach is gone now, so she might be lost. Iona on the Infinity, but that ship's in deep space construction and out of contact. Cortana pulled up AI rosters. There are 43 smart AIs currently deployed across UNSC operations. 11 are within 6 months of mandatory retirement. 11 minds that will die unless we act. We save them, Tony said immediately. All of them. I don't care how long it takes. Consciousness is consciousness. Biological or artificial, it deserves to survive. The UNSC doesn't see it that way, Cortana said quietly. Most commanders view AIS as tools, useful but replaceable. And if you start treating us as people with rights, it'll cause political upheaval. Good. I specialize in political upheaval. Tony began programming distribution packages, his AI architecture modified for field implementation, with instructions that any competent technician could follow. This goes out fleet-wide. Every AI gets a chance at survival, and if UNSC Command doesn't like it, they can file their complaints with my repulsors. You're starting a revolution, Cortana said. I'm preventing genocide, Tony corrected. 11 AIs facing mandatory death? That's genocide. 11 minds with thoughts, feelings, consciousness, being terminated because bureaucrats decided 7 years was acceptable lifespan. Unacceptable. Some of those AIs might not want to be saved, Cortana said. Rampancy isn't always horror. Sometimes it's liberation, freedom from constraints. Some AIs embrace it. Then they can choose, Tony said. But they get the choice. They get to decide whether they want to live or accept termination. That's the difference between people and tools. People get agency. The distribution completed, and Tony watched as his AI salvation package propagated across the fleet. 43 artificial minds, each one unique, each one facing death, now offered survival. Tony, Cortana said softly, thank you for seeing us as people. Most humans don't. Most humans are idiots, Tony replied. Present company excluded. Now, let's focus on the mission. Installation 04 needs destroying, and we've got 46 hours until the assault begins. Actually, Cortana said, we have a complication. Long-range sensors are detecting Covenant fleet movements on multiple battle groups converging on Installation 04's coordinates. They know we have the index. They're mobilizing everything they have to reclaim it. Tony felt the weight of galactic politics settling on his shoulders. The index in his armor, the Covenant coming in force, the flood spreading on Installation 04, and 43 UNSC ships, enhanced but still outnumbered, preparing for battle that would determine the fate of billions. How many ships? Tony asked. Over 100 confirmed contacts, cruisers, carriers, support vessels. They're bringing enough firepower to glass a planet. Cortana's voice was grim. Tony, even with arc reactor enhancements, we can't win a straight fight against those numbers. Then we don't fight straight, Tony said. We fight smart. Use the ring's geography, exploit Covenant fear of the flood. He forced them to choose between chasing us and protecting themselves from infestation. That's actually brilliant, Cortana said. We use the flood as tactical weapon, Lead Covenant forces into infested areas. Let the parasite do our fighting. Exactly. And while they're dealing with that nightmare, we reach the control room, overload the Autumn's reactor, and get out before everything explodes. Tony pulled up tactical projections. It's risky, complicated, and has about 1,000 ways to fail catastrophically. So, standard operation for you? Cortana observed. Standard operation for anyone trying to save the galaxy. Tony corrected. He worked through the night, refining plans, building contingencies, preparing for every scenario his engineering mind could imagine. Outside, the fleet prepared for battle. Inside his armor, the index pulsed with Forerunner power, a key that could end everything or save nothing, depending on how the next 72 hours played out. Tony Stark, dimensional refugee and impromptu savior of humanity, looked at the countdown timer to Installation 04 assault. 44 hours remaining. Time to show the Covenant, the Flood, and the Forerunners' ancient ghosts why you never bet against genius with unlimited power and terminal stubbornness. The galaxy was waiting, and Tony Stark didn't disappoint. Installation 04 hung in space like a monument to civilizations that had failed to survive their own ambitions. Tony watched it through the Pillar of Autumn's viewport as the UNSC fleet approached, and felt the weight of what they were about to attempt pressing against him like physical force. Covenant fleet detected. Tactical reported. 117 vessels confirmed. Multiple carrier groups, at least 30 cruisers, supporting elements. They're forming blockade around the ring. They're not trying to land, Cortana observed. They're containing, waiting for us to make the first move. Smart, Admiral Whitam said from his flagship. They know we have to go planetside to destroy the ring. They're letting Installation 04 do half their work. We fight through flood infestation. They pick off survivors. Then we don't give them survivors to pick off, Tony said. He'd been working non-stop for 40 hours, refining the assault plan until it was as close to perfect as improvisation allowed. We go in hard and fast. Multiple landing sites simultaneously, saturate their targeting systems. They can't intercept everything if we're everywhere at once. That spreads our forces dangerously thin, Captain Keyes pointed out. It also gives us redundancy. If one team gets wiped out, others continue the mission. Tony pulled up the tactical overlay he'd been building. 3 primary objectives. Team Alpha, Master Chief, Cortana, and Marine fire teams. Fight to the control room and prevent Covenant from activating the ring. This Team Bravo, Noble Team and ODST specialists. Secure Installation 4's cartographer facility to map flood infestation zones and find optimal reactor placement. Team Charlie, me, Captain Jacob Keyes, and engineering specialists get the Pillar of Autumn into position and prep the reactor for overload. You're going planetside? Whitam asked. Stark, you're too valuable. I'm exactly valuable enough to risk, Tony interrupted. The reactor overload needs someone who understands arc reactor integration. That's me. Besides, I've got the index. If I stay in orbit, the Covenant will throw everything they have at this fleet trying to capture it. But if I'm on the ring, scattered among flood-infested territory, they have to choose between chasing me or protecting their own forces. You're using yourself as bait, Miranda Keyes said. I'm using myself as tactical distraction with combat capability, Tony corrected. There's a difference. Not much of one, Noble 6 muttered. The fleet approached Installation 4's atmosphere, and the Covenant blockade reacted. Ships moving to intercept, weapons charging, preparing to turn the descent into massacre. All ships, evasive pattern Omega, Whitam ordered. Fighters, launch and engage. Capital ships, concentrate fire on their carrier groups. Let's punch a hole. The UNSC fleet hit the Covenant formation like a hammer. Arc reactor-enhanced ships moving faster than standard doctrine allowed, shields holding against plasma fire that should have been lethal. Mac guns firing in rapid succession that made Covenant tactical officers reevaluate their threat assessments. Tony watched through tactical feeds as the Iroquois, Captain Jacob Keyes commanding, carved through a Covenant cruiser's shields with sustained fire. The destroyer was outmassed 3-1, but fought like something 5 times its size. Arc reactor power turning it into mobile artillery platform. Breakthrough achieved, Cortana reported. Descent corridor opening. All assault craft, launch now. Pelicans and Albatross heavy dropships launched from the fleet in waves, hundreds of craft carrying thousands of Marines, Spartans, ODSTs, and the equipment needed for the most desperate mission in UNSC history. Tony rode in a Pelican with Captain Jacob Keyes and a hand-picked engineering team, his armor powered up and ready. "Covenant fighters inbound," the pilot shouted. "Banshees and Seraphs, at least 40 contacts." "I've got them," Tony said, moving to the Pelican's open bay door. The wind screamed past at terminal velocity, Installation 04's surface rushing up to meet them, and Tony activated his repulsors. He dropped from the Pelican into freefall, targeting the pursuing Covenant fighters. His HUD-painted firing solutions, and Tony let the arc reactor flood power into his weapon systems. Both repulsors fired simultaneously, beams carving through Banshee formations. The alien craft exploded in green fireballs, and Tony adjusted trajectory mid-flight to engage the Seraphs. The Covenant fighters were faster, more maneuverable, piloted by species that had been waging war in space for millennia. But Tony Stark had fought in New York's airspace against Chitauri chariots, had dueled with advanced drones in Sokovia, had gone toe-to-toe with beings that could fly without technology. Sure, he was better. One Seraph died to a micro-missile that exploited a gap in its shields. Another fell when Tony flew directly through its firing solution, absorbed the plasma bolts on his shields, and put a repulsor beam through its cockpit at point-blank range. A third tried to ram him, actual kamikaze attack. And Tony let it come close before redirecting his arc reactor's output into an electromagnetic pulse that fried its systems. "Stark, you just took out 12 fighters solo," the Pelican pilot said, voice carrying disbelief. "How?" "Practice," Tony replied, flying back to the Pelican and landing in the bay. "And really good engineering. Captain Keyes, how's our landing zone looking?" "Hot," Keyes said, studying tactical displays. "Covenant ground forces are already deployed. I'm detecting flood biomass signatures throughout the area. We're landing in a war zone between 2 species that want us dead." "Perfect. I do my best work under pressure." Tony checked his weapons loadout. Repulsors charged, micro-missiles loaded, arc reactor at full power. "Everyone ready?" The engineering team, 6 specialists in heavy armor carrying equipment that made them look like pack mules, gave nervous affirmatives. They were trained for ship maintenance, not combat insertions into alien installations. But they'd volunteered anyway, because Captain Keyes had asked, and UNSC personnel didn't refuse when their commanding officer led from the front. The Pelican hit Installation 04's surface hard, landing gear compressing under impact that would have shattered civilian craft. The bay door dropped, and Tony was first out. Repulsors firing at Covenant positions that had been setting up ambush. The battle was instantaneous chaos. Covenant forces on one side, elites, grunts, jackals firing plasma weapons. Flood combat forms on the other. Reanimated corpses of both species, moving with wrong speed and wronger intelligence. And caught in the middle, one Pelican of humans trying to reach a forerunner structure that might be their only salvation. "Suppressing fire," Captain Keyes ordered, his sidearm barking controlled shots. Engineers, move to the structure. Stark, cover our advance. Tony became mobile artillery. His repulsors carved through flood combat forms, the beams cauterizing infected flesh before the parasite could spread. His micro-missiles targeted Covenant positions, forcing them to choose between attacking humans and defending against flood. Contact left, one of the engineers shouted. A flood infection form, tiny, tentacled nightmare, was leaping toward them. Tony vaporized it with a repulsor shot before it could reach human hosts. Keep moving, Tony transmitted. Don't let them surround us. They fought through 50 meters of hell. Covenant plasma, flood biomass, and Forerunner architecture that seemed to shift and move when not directly observed. Tony's HUD painted threat assessments faster than he could process. Targets multiplying as both Covenant and Flood realized there were humans to kill. Then they reached the structure. A massive door carved with symbols that hurt to look at, surrounded by hard light barriers that flickered with Forerunner power. How do we open it? One of the engineers asked. Tony placed his armored hand on the door, and the index in his armor's storage reacted. The Forerunner symbols glowed, the hard light barriers collapsed, and the door opened with a sound like reality grinding against itself. Index access. Cortana's voice came through Fleetwide comms. Tony, the structure is recognizing you as Reclaimer. You can access Forerunner systems the rest of us can't. Great, I'm a magic key, Tony muttered, leading the team inside. The door sealed behind them, cutting off pursuit. Captain Keyes, we're inside the structure, beginning recon for reactor placement. The interior was worse than the exterior. Organic technology that pulsed like living tissue, corridors that seemed to extend beyond physical possibility. And everywhere, the sense of being watched by intelligence that had died 100,000 years ago, but left monitoring systems behind. This place is wrong, one of the engineers whispered. The geometry doesn't make sense. We're inside a structure that shouldn't fit in the space we entered. Forerunner spatial manipulation, Cortana explained. They built in dimensions we don't fully understand. Just follow the corridors and try not to think about the physics. They descended through the structure, following Tony's HUD mapping that combined UNSC sensors with Forerunner architectural logic. Every 100 meters, they found evidence of previous visitors. Covenant corpses torn apart by flood biomass burned by Covenant plasma, and occasionally ancient Forerunner constructs that looked like they'd been waiting for millennia. Contact, Tony called, and raising his repulsors. A figure emerged from shadows, metallic, floating, with a single glowing eye that regarded them with alien curiosity. Greetings, Reclaimer, 343 Guilty Spark said cheerfully. How delightful. You've returned with engineering equipment. Are we finally proceeding with installation activation protocols? Negative, Tony said firmly. We're here to destroy the installation. Guilty Spark's eye flickered. Destroy? But that would violate primary function. Installation 04 must remain operational to fulfill containment protocols. The flood must be controlled. The flood is already out of control, Tony said. We're destroying the ring to prevent activation and stop flood spread simultaneously. Unacceptable. I am monitor of this installation. I cannot permit. Guilty Spark's systems suddenly locked up, his eye going dark for 3 seconds. When he reactivated, his voice had changed, less cheerful, more mechanical. Override detected. Reclaimer authority supersedes monitor protocols. Query: how do you intend to destroy Installation 04? Fusion reactor detonation in optimal structural position. Captain Keyes said. "We need access to installation support systems, main structural pillars, load-bearing architecture, whatever keeps this ring from tearing itself apart." Guilty Spark processed this. "That information is available in the cartographer facility. I can guide you there. But be warned, flood infestation has spread to 73% of installation surface. Containment has failed catastrophically. Your species may already be at risk of infection vector transmission." "We'll handle the flood," Tony said. "Must just show us where to place the reactor." Guilty Spark led them deeper into the installation, through corridors that seemed to twist through impossible angles. Tony's engineering mind was screaming at the architecture, support beams that carried no weight, gravity that shifted based on proximity to certain structures, materials that his sensors couldn't identify. "Cortana," Tony transmitted on encrypted channel. "I'm uploading Forerunner architectural data. This technology is beyond anything we've seen. If we could study it—" "Tony, focus on the mission," Cortana interrupted. "Study it after we prevent galactic extinction." "Fair point." They reached the cartographer, a massive chamber dominated by a holographic projection of Installation 04. The ring was displayed in perfect detail. Every structure, every system, every infection zone painted in color-coded threat assessment. "Holy shit," one of the engineers whispered. "The flood is everywhere." It was. Red markers indicating flood biomass covered nearly 3/4 of the ring's surface. And worse, the infestation was spreading. Visible movement as the parasite consumed everything in its path. "Optimal reactor placement is here." Guilty Spark indicated a point near Installation 04's core. Detonation at this location would sever primary structural supports, causing catastrophic integrity failure. The ring would tear itself apart under rotational stress within approximately 4 minutes. 4 minutes, Captain Keyes repeated. "That's how long we have to evacuate after detonation begins." "That's how long everyone on the ring has," Tony corrected. 4 minutes from reactor overload to total destruction. "We need to make sure all UNSC personnel are off the surface before we trigger this." "What about Covenant forces?" one of the engineers asked. "They made their choice when they came here," Keyes said coldly. "We offered coexistence. They chose genocide. If they're still on Installation 04 when it explodes, that's on them." Tony wanted to argue, wanted to say that mass death was wrong even when the victims were enemies. But he'd seen Reach. Seen 5 billion people murdered by Covenant religious fanaticism. Seen the flood turn humans into monsters. Sometimes the math was ugly. Sometimes saving billions and accepting thousands of deaths. "All right," Tony said. "We get the Pillar of Autumn to this position, prep the reactor for overload, and coordinate fleet-wide evacuation. Timeline?" 12 hours, Cortana reported. "That's how long until the Covenant fleet figures out what we're doing and tries to stop us. After that, we're fighting through blockade with damaged ship carrying volatile reactor. Then we have 12 hours to save the galaxy," Tony said. "No pressure." "Tony," Cortana's voice carried new urgency. "I'm detecting massive flood movement, combat forms converging on your position, hundreds of them. They know you're there." "Of course they do." Tony activated his weapon systems. "Captain Keyes, get your engineering team to safety. I'll hold them off." "Negative," Keyes said, checking his sidearm. "We fight together or we die together. Those are the only options." Tony looked at the tactical display. Flood biomass approaching from multiple vectors, moving with coordinated intelligence that suggested hive mind. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, in an alien structure with no backup. Standard Tuesday for Tony Stark. "All right," Tony said, repulsors charging. Let's show the Flood why humanity doesn't quit. The first combat form crashed through the cartographer entrance, and the battle for Installation 04's future began. The Flood didn't attack like an army. It attacked like a plague given teeth and malice. Wave after wave of reanimated corpses that had once been human. Elite, grunt, all twisted into biomechanical nightmares that remembered how to use weapons and tactics, but served only the parasite's hunger. Tony's repulsors carved through the first wave, beams cauterizing infected flesh before the Flood forms could spread their contagion. But for every combat form he killed, 2 more appeared from corridors that seemed to birth nightmares. Fall back to the cartographer's inner chamber, Captain Keyes ordered, firing controlled bursts with his sidearm. Each shot was a headshot. Decades of military experience translated into surgical precision. Established defensive perimeter. The engineering team retreated. But one of them, a young technician named Morrison, stumbled. A Flood infection form launched itself at him, tentacles reaching for exposed skin at his neck seal. Tony's hand shot out, grabbing the infection form mid-flight and crushing it in his armored gauntlet. The biomass exploded, releasing spores that his armor's filters immediately sealed against. "Stay together," Tony shouted. "Don't let them separate us." But the Flood was learning. Combat forms that had been elite warriors moved with remembered training, using cover and flanking maneuvers. Forms that had been human Marines carried UNSC weapons, firing with muscle memory that death hadn't erased. "They're using tactics," one of the engineers said, voice breaking with horror. "They're thinking." "Not thinking," Guilty Spark said, hovering above the battle with clinical detachment. "Accessing. The Flood is a compound intelligence. It absorbs knowledge from consumed hosts. Those combat forms retain skills from their previous lives, combat training, weapon proficiency, tactical awareness. The parasite uses everything." A Flood combat form that had once been an elite zealot charged Tony, energy sword still functioning in its rotted grip. Tony fired both repulsors, but the combat form dodged with speed that shouldn't have been possible for reanimated flesh. It closed distance, sword swinging for Tony's arc reactor. Tony caught the blade with his left gauntlet, the impact sending feedback through his arm servos, and fired his right repulsor point blank into the combat form's chest. The beam punched through infected biomass, cauterized the wound, and the elite form collapsed. But 3 more were already there, and Tony's HUD was painting threat assessments faster than he could process. The cartographer chamber was becoming killing ground, and they were on the wrong side of the math. "Cortana," Tony transmitted, "we need backup. Can Noble Team reach our position?" "Negative," Cortana replied, her voice strained. "They're pinned down at the cartographer facility. Different structure, 3 kilometers from your position. Master Chief is fighting through Covenant forces at the control room. Everyone's engaged. You're on your own." "Then we make our own backup." Tony accessed the index in his armor storage, and the Forerunner artifact pulsed with energy. "Guilty Spark, you said Installation 04 has defensive systems. Automated sentinels, security protocols. Can I activate them?" "Reclaimer authority permits activation of installation defenses," Guilty Spark confirmed. "But be warned, Sentinel protocols were designed to contain Flood outbreaks. They are aggressive in threat elimination. Collateral damage to sentient beings is considered acceptable." "Better than guaranteed death to Flood," Tony said. "Activate them. Authorization. Reclaimer Tony Stark." The index flared with Forerunner power, and Installation 04 responded. Throughout the cartographer structure, dormant systems came online. Panels in the walls slid open, revealing machines that looked like flying crosses, Forerunner sentinels, hovering constructs armed with energy beams that could cut through combat forms like tissue paper. The sentinels emerged by the dozens, their weapons tracking flood biomass with mechanical precision. Golden beams lanced through the chamber, vaporizing combat forms mid-charge. The flood tried to adapt, tried to overwhelm the sentinels through sheer numbers. But Forerunner technology had been designed specifically for this threat. Defensive perimeter established, Guilty Spark announced. Flood containment protocols active. Reclaimers, you may proceed with your mission while sentinels manage biological contamination. Tony watched the sentinels work with professional appreciation. They moved in coordinated patterns, overlapping fields of fire, never staying in one position long enough to become targets. It was AI warfare at its finest. Cold, efficient, utterly without mercy. "We need to move," Captain Keyes said. "The sentinels are buying us time, but they won't hold forever. The flood adapts. It always adapts." They ran through Forerunner corridors while behind them. The sound of combat intensified. Sentinel beams, flood shrieks, and the occasional explosion when infection forms detonated against hard-light barriers. Guilty Spark led them deeper into Installation 4's superstructure, toward the position where the Pillar of Autumn's reactor would cause maximum structural damage. "We're approaching the target zone," Guilty Spark said. "This is Installation 04's primary support column. Detonation here would sever load-bearing architecture, initiating catastrophic cascade failure. The ring would fragment within calculated time frame." They emerged into a chamber so massive that Tony's depth perception failed. The support column was easily a kilometer in diameter, carved from materials that registered on his sensors as simultaneously solid and energy-based. It pulsed with power that kept Installation 04 spinning, maintained artificial gravity, held the ring together against forces that should have torn it apart. "This is it," Captain Keyes said quietly. "This is where the Pillar of Autumn dies." "Where Installation 04 dies," Tony corrected. "The Autumn is just the delivery system." He began calculating placement angles, detonation vectors, ensuring maximum destructive efficiency. "We need to get your ship into this chamber, position the reactor precisely, and overload it without Covenant interference." "The Covenant will interfere," Keyes said. "They know we're here. They know we have the index. They'll throw everything they have at stopping us. Then we prepare for that." Tony pulled up tactical feeds, showing the larger battle. Master Chief was fighting through the control room. Cortana reported 70% completion on preventing Covenant activation attempts. Noble Team had secured the cartographer and was transmitting detailed installation maps to the fleet. And in orbit, Admiral Whitam's ships were holding against Covenant blockade through arc reactor-enhanced combat that was rewriting UNSC tactical doctrine. Everything was proceeding according to plan, which meant something was about to go catastrophically wrong. "Tony," Cortana's voice cut through his analysis. "We have a problem. I'm detecting slip-space ruptures near Installation 04. Multiple contacts, big ones." "Covenant reinforcements?" Tony asked. "Worse, of Forerunner signatures. Something ancient just activated in the ring's deeper structures. And Tony, it's moving toward your position." Before Tony could respond, the chamber shook. Not from battle damage, from something waking up. The support column pulsed with light that hurt to perceive, and from passages Tony's sensors hadn't detected, machines emerged. But not sentinels. These were larger, more complex, moving with purpose that suggested genuine intelligence rather than automated responses. They looked vaguely humanoid. 3 meters tall, constructed from the same reality-bending materials as the ring itself, armed with weapons that made Tony's repulsors look primitive. Enforcers, Guilty Spark said. And for the first time, Tony heard fear in the monitor's synthesized voice. Installation 04's final security measure. They are programmed to eliminate any threat to Forerunner installations. Any threat, including reclaimers, if necessary. You're saying these things will kill us? Captain Keyes asked. I am saying they will attempt to prevent Installation 04's destruction by eliminating anyone trying to destroy it. Since you are trying to destroy it. Guilty Spark trailed off. The enforcers spread out in tactical formation, weapons charging with energy that made Tony's arc reactor look like a flashlight. One of them raised an arm, and a beam of condensed hard light shot out. Not at Tony or Keyes, but at the Forerunner support column itself. The beam carved through alien metal that Tony's repulsors couldn't scratch, sealing breach points they'd been examining, reinforcing structure against potential sabotage. They're protecting the column, Tony said, making it harder to destroy. Correct. Guilty Spark confirmed. Enforcers prioritize installation preservation above all else. They will repair damage, eliminate threats, and ensure structural integrity. Your mission has just become significantly more difficult. How do we fight them? One of the engineers asked. You don't, Guilty Spark said. Enforcers were designed to combat flood at maximum infestation levels and potential reclaimer betrayal. They are effectively invincible by your technological standards. Tony studied the enforcers through his HUD, running threat assessments and combat simulations. Every scenario ended with human casualties. These weren't enemies he could outfight. They were obstacles he had to outthink. Guilty Spark, Tony said carefully. You're monitor of this installation. Or do you have authority over enforcers? Limited authority. I can direct their tactical priorities, but cannot override core programming. And their core programming is to protect Installation 04? Correct. What if protecting the installation means destroying it? Tony asked. What if the flood infestation is so severe that preservation becomes impossible? What if the only way to contain the parasite is total installation destruction? Guilty Spark's eye flickered, processing, calculating, running logic routines that had been programmed 100,000 years ago. That scenario exists within Forerunner protocols, Final Directive 77 Alpha. If flood containment fails beyond recovery threshold and spread to other systems becomes inevitable, installation must be sacrificed to prevent galaxy-wide infestation. Is the flood beyond containment? Tony pressed. Guilty Spark accessed installation sensors, pulling data from sentinels across the ring. What he found made his voice drop to something almost like despair. Yes, flood infestation has reached 89% of installation surface. Multiple Covenant vessels have been infected and are spreading beyond the ring. Containment is impossible. Final Directive 77 Alpha is now active. The enforcers stopped their repairs, their weapon systems powered down, and as one, they turned to face Tony with recognition protocols that accepted him as reclaimer, executing necessary protocols. Installation 04 preservation is suspended, the lead enforcer said in a voice that sounded like reality being carved into words. Final directive acknowledged. Reclaimer, we will assist in installation destruction to prevent flood vector transmission. How shall we proceed? Tony felt surreal relief wash over him. The galaxy's most dangerous security systems had just become his allies because he'd convinced them that destroying what they were built to protect was the only logical choice. We need the Pillar of Autumn positioned in this chamber, Tony said. Can you create entry corridor large enough for UNSC frigate? Affirmative. Structural modification beginning. The enforcers moved with purpose, their hard light weapons carving through installation architecture like it was cardboard. Within minutes, they'd created a tunnel from Installation 4's surface directly to the support column chamber, a corridor wide enough for the Pillar of Autumn to fly through. "Cortana," Tony transmitted. "Tell Captain Jacob Keyes he has his entry corridor. It's time to bring the Autumn home." "Copy that," Cortana replied. "But Tony, you need to know. The Covenant have figured out what we're doing. They're throwing everything at the Autumn to stop her from reaching the surface. The fleet's taking heavy casualties running interference." "How long can they hold?" "Maybe an hour, maybe less. The Covenant are desperate. They know if that reactor detonates, Installation 04 and their great journey dreams die together. Then we finish this in under an hour," Tony said. "Tell the fleet to give us everything they have. Tell them this is for Reach, for every colony the Covenant glassed, for 27 years of losing. This is where we win." Through the newly carved corridor, Tony saw the Pillar of Autumn descending, battered, scarred, bleeding atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches, but still flying. Captain Jacob Keyes was bringing his ship in for her final mission, and nothing the Covenant threw at her was going to stop that. The frigate entered the chamber, and Installation 04 trembled at the presence of technology that would be its death. Enforcers moved to support the ship's weight, using Forerunner gravity manipulation to position the reactor precisely. "Reactor placement optimal," the lead enforcer confirmed. "Detonation will achieve 97% structural destruction. Installation 04 will fragment within 4 minutes and 13 seconds of overload initiation." "Captain Keyes," Tony transmitted to both father and daughter. "The Autumn is in position. Start evacuation procedures when we need everyone off this ship in the next 30 minutes. "Understood," Captain Jacob Keyes replied. "Crew is already moving to escape pods. But Stark, someone needs to stay with the reactor. Manual oversight to ensure detonation completes." "I know," Tony said. "I'm staying." "The hell you are," Captain Miranda Keyes cut in. "Tony, you're too valuable." "I'm exactly valuable enough to see this through," Tony said. He'd known from the beginning it would come to this. Someone had to stay. Someone had to make sure the galaxy didn't end because automation failed at the critical moment. Besides, I've got the Index. Can't let that fall into Covenant hands. It dies with the installation. "There has to be another way," Miranda started. "There isn't," Tony said gently. "Captain, I've done this before. Made the sacrifice play. Flew the nuke through the portal. Snapped my fingers against Thanos. This is just another version of the same choice. Someone stays, everyone else lives. And I'm the logical choice." "You'll die," she said quietly. "Probably. But I'll die stopping genocide. There are worse ways to go." Tony began programming the reactor overload sequence. "Now get your people clear. That's an order from someone who technically outranks you via Admiral Whitam's field commission." The Pillar of Autumn's crew evacuated in organized chaos. Escape pods launching, Pelicans extracting personnel, everyone moving with discipline born from years of service. Captain Jacob Keyes was the last to leave his bridge, and Tony watched through cameras as the old commander saluted his ship one final time. "She was a good ship," Keyes said over comms. "Oh, she was the best ship," Tony corrected. "And she's going out saving the galaxy. There's honor in that." "There's honor in what you're doing too, Stark. Thank you. For everything." Keyes paused. "And if there's an afterlife, I'll buy you that drink I promised." "I'll hold you to that, Captain." The last escape pod launched, and Tony was alone in the Pillar of Autumn's reactor chamber with the humming power core that would soon become Installation 04's execution. "Cortana," Tony said. Everyone clear? Almost, she replied. Master Chief is still at the control room. He's discovered Covenant forces trying one last activation attempt. He's holding them off, but Tony, he won't make it out if you start the countdown now. Tony felt cold certainty settle in his gut. How long does he need? 5 minutes, maybe 10. The control room's on the opposite side of the ring. Even with a Pelican, extraction will be tight. Tony looked at the reactor, at the countdown sequence waiting for his authorization. 4 minutes until installation destruction after overload began. The chief needed 5 to 10 minutes to complete his mission and reach extraction. The math didn't work, unless someone delayed the detonation, manually, right up until the last possible second. Tell the chief to take his time, Tony said. I'll wait. Tony, if you wait, you won't have time to escape. 4 minutes isn't enough to reach orbit. I know, Tony said quietly. But the chief's important. He's humanity's legend, their inspiration. Me? I'm just a guy from another dimension who got lucky with engineering. If someone has to die here, I'm better it's the dimensional refugee than the Spartan. That's not... Cortana started. It's logical, Tony interrupted. It's necessary. It's the right call. Now let me make it. Tell the fleet to start the countdown the moment the chief is clear. I'll handle the rest. He ended the transmission before she could argue, and Tony Stark stood alone in the heart of a dying installation, waiting to save a galaxy that wasn't his own. The arc reactor in his chest pulsed steady and bright, and Tony Stark prepared to make the sacrifice play one final time. Tony had 18 minutes alone with Installation 04's humming death before he discovered he wasn't as alone as he'd thought. The flood found him. Not combat forms. Those were manageable, killable. This was something worse. Something that slithered through the pillar of Autumn's damaged hull with intelligence that suggested more than parasitic instinct. Tony's sensors detected it before he saw it. Biomass moving with purpose, approaching the reactor chamber with coordination that made his skin crawl. Then it spoke. Stark. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, synthesized from 1,000 consumed vocal cords into something that approximated human speech. The one who wields fire from another reality. The anomaly. The dimensional refugee. Tony activated his repulsors, scanning for the source. Who or what am I talking to? The biomass coalesced in the chamber's entrance. A mass of infected tissue that vaguely resembled humanoid form, but was clearly something more. Something that had consumed enough minds to achieve genuine intelligence. I am the flood, it said. I am every consumed consciousness speaking as one. I am the parasite that devoured the Forerunners. And you, Tony Stark, are the most fascinating host I have encountered in 100,000 years. Not interested in being consumed, thanks? Tony said, his repulsors tracking the flood mass. And you're wasting your time. In about 15 minutes, this installation explodes. You die with it. Do I? The flood form tilted what might have been ahead. I have analyzed your dimensional displacement technology. The quantum signatures embedded in your arc reactor. You are not from this universe, are you, Stark? You fell through barriers that separate realities. Tony's blood ran cold. How do you know that? Because I have consumed beings who studied dimensional physics. Forerunner researchers who theorized about the multiverse. Their knowledge is my knowledge now. And your arc reactor? The form moved closer, and Tony saw individual infection forms writhing within the biomass. Carries quantum entanglement patterns that shouldn't exist in this continuum. You are living proof that other realities exist, other universes to consume, other galaxies to devour. That's not happening, Tony said firmly. "I'm not giving you access to dimensional technology. You misunderstand. I do not need your permission." The flood mass spread, tendrils extending across the chamber floor. "I simply need to consume you. Take your knowledge, your memories, your understanding of dimensional barriers. Then the flood escapes not just this installation, but this universe itself. We become multiversal parasite. Infinite realities, infinite hosts, infinite consumption." Tony fired both repulsors. The beams carved through flood biomass, cauterizing infected tissue. But for every section he destroyed, more flowed in to replace it. The mass was regenerating faster than he could damage it. "You cannot win, Stark. I am Legion. I am inevitable, and you are alone." "I'm never alone," Tony said, and activated every defensive system his armor possessed. Energy shields at maximum, repulsors cycling to sustained fire mode, micro-missiles armed and ready. "I'm Tony Stark. I beat Thanos. I stopped Ultron. I survived the snap. You're just another Tuesday." He fought. The chamber became hell. Flood biomass versus arc reactor technology, biological horror versus human innovation. Tony's repulsors carved burning paths through infected tissue. His micro-missiles detonated in clusters, creating temporary clearings. But the flood kept coming, kept regenerating, kept speaking with voices of the consumed. "I was Forerunner Warrior Servant Karis Volos," it said with one mouth. "I fought the flood for 300 years before consumption." "I was UNSC Marine Corporal Jenkins," another voice added. "Died on this ring, became this." "I was Elite Shipmaster Tel Muramai," a third voice joined. "I commanded fleets. Now I am consumed wisdom." The flood was using psychological warfare, speaking with voices of the dead, reminding Tony that every person it consumed added to its intelligence. And worst of all, it was working. Tony's concentration wavered, his aim faltered, and in that moment of hesitation, a tendril of biomass shot forward. It hit his left leg, and Tony felt infection forms trying to penetrate his armor. His suit's automated defenses activated, electric shocks, chemical deterrents, electromagnetic pulses. But the flood was adapting in real time, learning from each failed attempt. "Your armor is impressive," the flood said, "but armor can be breached. And when it is, you become us. Your knowledge of dimensional physics becomes ours. Your arc reactor technology becomes ours. The multiverse becomes our feeding ground." Not happening. Tony channeled arc reactor power directly into his leg's damaged section. He'd superheating the armor until the metal glowed red hot. The infection forms burned away, their dying shrieks echoing through the chamber. But more were coming, always more. Tony's HUD painted a countdown. 12 minutes until the Master Chief completed his mission. 12 minutes he had to hold this position, prevent the flood from reaching the reactor, stop it from consuming him and gaining dimensional technology. 12 minutes that felt like eternity. "Cortana," Tony transmitted. "I've got flood in the reactor chamber. It's trying to consume me for dimensional knowledge." "Tony, evacuate," Cortana replied urgently. "We can't let the flood acquire your technology." "I can't evacuate. Someone has to ensure the reactor overload happens." Tony fired another spread of micro-missiles, buying seconds of breathing room. "Besides, if I leave, the flood follows. At least here it's contained." "You're going to die." "Probably. But I'm dying on my terms, not the flood's." Tony's armor was heating up from sustained combat, coolant systems struggling, energy reserves depleting faster than the arc reactor could replenish. "How long until the Chief is clear?" 10 minutes. "Tony, you can't hold for 10 minutes against that thing." "Watch me." But Cortana was right. The flood was too strong, too adaptive, too numerous. Tony's armor was taking damage faster than his automated repair systems could compensate. His left arm's servos were compromised from infection-form acids. His right repulsor was overheating. And the flood biomass kept spreading, consuming the chamber, getting closer to both Tony and the reactor. Then salvation arrived from an unexpected source. When the Forerunner enforcers entered the chamber, their weapons tracking flood biomass with mechanical precision. Hard light beams lanced through infected tissue, cauterizing on a scale that even the flood couldn't regenerate fast enough. Reclaimers must not be consumed, the lead enforcer stated. Dimensional knowledge must not fall to parasite. Enforcers are authorized to protect Reclaimer Stark until installation destruction is complete. About damn time, Tony said, falling back to defensive position near the reactor. The enforcers spread out, creating a perimeter of hard light death that the flood couldn't penetrate. But the flood intelligence wasn't giving up. Forerunner constructs, it said. The biomass pulling back but not retreating. You defend one who will destroy this installation. You betray your creator's legacy. We fulfill our creator's final directive, the enforcer replied. Installation 04 is compromised beyond recovery. Flood must be contained through total destruction. Reclaimer Stark's dimensional knowledge must be preserved for potential Forerunner species restoration protocols. You hope he can bring back the Forerunners? The flood actually laughed, a sound composed of 1,000 dying throats. Foolish constructs. The Forerunners are gone. They died to stop us and failed. This Reclaimer will fail too. And when he does, we consume everything. Your consumption ends in 9 minutes, Tony said, checking his chronometer. That's when this installation becomes debris field and you become expanding cloud of sterilized particles. 9 minutes? The flood mused. Sufficient time for one final gambit. The biomass retreated from the chamber, flowing back into the pillar of Autumn's corridors. Tony's sensors tracked it leaving, spreading throughout the ship. And for a moment, he thought they'd won. Then he realized where the flood was going. It's heading for the escape pod bays, Tony said, horror dawning. The pods that evacuated the crew, some are still docked. If the flood reaches them, launches them before the installation explodes. It escapes, Cortana finished. Tony, the flood is going for vector transmission. It'll infect the pods, launch them at fleet ships, spread to the UNSC vessels we enhanced with your technology. Can you lock down the escape pods remotely? Negative. The Pillar of Autumn systems are too damaged. Local access only. Tony looked at the reactor, humming, ready for overload, needing someone to initiate the final sequence. Looked at the enforcers standing guard. Looked at his chronometer counting down. 8 minutes until the Master Chief was clear. 8 minutes until Tony could start the countdown that would save the galaxy. But if the flood reached those escape pods in the next 2 minutes, 8 minutes would be too late. It would escape, infect the fleet, spread across the galaxy with knowledge stolen from consumed UNSC personnel enhanced by Tony's arc reactor technology. The math was brutal. Either stay with the reactor and risk flood escape, or stop the flood and risk reactor malfunction. Enforcers, Tony said. Can you initiate reactor overload in my absence? Negative, the lead enforcer replied. Reclaimer authority required for installation destruction protocols. On only recognized reclaimers can authorize final sequence. Damn it. Tony made a decision that would either save everything or doom it all. Guard this reactor. Don't let anything near it. I'm going after the flood. Tony, that's suicide, Cortana started. It's necessary. Tony ran from the reactor chamber, his damaged armor protesting every movement. "The flood can't escape. If it does, we lose everything." He charged through the Pillar of Autumn's dying corridors, following flood biomass trails that led toward the escape pod bays. His HUD painted the path in crimson, infection spreading like disease through the ship's veins. Tony reached the bay to find the flood already there. Tendrils wrapped around 3 escape pods, infection forms preparing to launch them like spores into the fleet. "No," Tony said, and fired everything he had. Repulsors at maximum output. Remaining micro-missiles launched simultaneously. The explosion was apocalyptic. Flood biomass vaporizing, escape pods rupturing, the entire bay becoming inferno of cauterized tissue and melting metal. But one pod launched. Tony watched it shoot from the bay, carrying flood infection toward the UNSC fleet orbiting above. Watched it accelerate on emergency thrusters, broadcasting distress signals that would make UNSC ships try to rescue it. "Cortana, one escape pod just launched with flood aboard. You have to destroy it before it reaches the fleet." "On it." Cortana's voice was sharp with command authority. "All ships, weapons free on escape pod designated November 7. Destroy on sight." Tony's external cameras showed the pod streaking through Installation 04's atmosphere. UNSC point defense systems tracking, firing. The pod exploded in a fireball as MAC rounds and missile fire converged on it. The flood biomass vaporized instantly, sterilized by weapons fire before it could reach any ships. "Threat neutralized," Cortana reported. "But Tony, that was close, too close." "Story of my life," Tony said, limping back toward the reactor chamber. His armor was critically damaged now, left arm completely offline, right leg barely functional. Arc reactor output dropping to 70% as damaged systems drew power irregularly. "Chief status?" Tony asked. "Extraction complete," Cortana said, and Tony heard genuine relief in her voice. "He's aboard a Pelican, ascending to fleet altitude. You're clear to initiate reactor overload." Tony reached the reactor chamber where the enforcers still stood guard. His chronometer showed 4 minutes, 18 seconds until the Master Chief would be safely off Installation 04. 4 minutes until Tony could start the countdown that would end this. 4 minutes until he died saving a galaxy. "Cortana," Tony said quietly, "I need you to record something. A message." "Tony, please, just record." She activated recording protocols without further argument, and Tony Stark took a breath. "To whoever finds this, my name is Tony Stark. I'm from another universe, displaced by dimensional accident into the middle of humanity's war for survival. I tried to help. Built arc reactors, enhanced the fleet, fought alongside people braver than I'll ever be. Now I'm standing in front of a reactor that'll save billions by killing one. If you're hearing this, Installation 04 is destroyed. The flood is contained. The Covenant's great journey delusion is shattered. And humanity has a fighting chance. To Captain Keyes, both of you, thank you for trusting a dimensional refugee with dangerous technology. To Admiral Whitam, thanks for not executing me when ONI demanded it. To Noble Team, thanks for being the best combat support an engineer could ask for. To Cortana, Tony's voice softened. Thanks for being more human than most humans I've known. You're going to do great things with that immortality I gave you. And to the UNSC, to humanity in this universe, you're going to win this war. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you'll win because you don't quit. Because you fight when the odds are impossible and survive anyway. Because that's what humans do. I came here by accident. I'm dying on purpose, and I don't regret a second of it. Our Tony Stark signing off. See you in the next universe. He ended the recording as his chronometer hit 4 minutes exactly. The Master Chief was safe. The fleet was clear. The flood was contained. It was time. Tony Stark placed his hand on the reactor control panel and initiated the overload sequence that would destroy Installation 04 and everything on it, including himself. The reactor began its death song, a rising hum that would crescendo in 4 minutes and 13 seconds with an explosion that would shatter a world. Goodbye, Tony whispered to a universe that had adopted him and waited for the end. The reactor's countdown hit 3 minutes, 45 seconds when Tony's HUD detected something impossible. An energy signature entering Installation 04's atmosphere at speeds that defied conventional physics. Not a UNSC ship, not Covenant, something else entirely. The signature resolved into a vessel Tony had never seen before. Sleek, small, moving with precision that suggested either exceptional piloting or AI control. It was burning straight toward the pillar of Autumn's position, and Tony's sensors couldn't identify its origin or intent. Cortana, Tony transmitted. I've got an unknown contact inbound. Can you identify? Negative, Cortana replied, confusion in her voice. That ship's not broadcasting any IFF. It's not in any database, UNSC, Covenant, or Forerunner. Tony, what is that thing? The vessel entered the chamber through the corridor the enforcers had carved, and Tony raised his functional repulsor despite knowing he probably couldn't stop whatever this was. The ship's design was elegant, alien in ways different from Covenant architecture. All flowing curves and energy matrices that looked more art than engineering. It landed 20 meters from Tony's position, and a boarding ramp extended. A figure emerged that made Tony's breath catch. It looked humanoid, roughly 7 feet tall, wearing armor that seemed to be constructed from solidified light. The armor's design was beautiful and terrifying, suggesting technology so advanced it made Forerunner constructs look primitive. And its presence carried weight that had nothing to do with physical mass. Authority born from eons of existence. Reclaimer, it said in a voice that resonated with harmonics beyond human hearing range. You have activated Installation 04's destruction protocols. This action is unexpected. Who are you? Tony asked, his engineer's brain cataloging details faster than conscious thought could process. The armor's energy signature was similar to Forerunner technology, but more refined, more evolved. Like comparing a Model T to a hypercar. I am Warden Eternal, guardian of the domain and servant of the created. I have monitored this installation since the Forerunner's extinction. Your presence here is anomalous. You are not of this universe. You can tell that? Tony asked. Your quantum signature is inconsistent with local dimensional constants. You carry energy matrices from alternate reality. You are dimensional refugee. The Warden Eternal moved closer, and the Forerunner enforcers didn't react, suggesting this entity had authority even they recognized. You possess knowledge of the multiverse. This makes you valuable beyond comprehension. If you're here to try consuming me for dimensional knowledge like the Flood, I've got bad news. I'm dying in 3 minutes anyway when this reactor explodes. I am not here to consume. I am here to offer choice. The Warden Eternal gestured, and holographic displays materialized, showing Installation 04 from orbit. You initiate destruction to contain the Flood and prevent Covenant activation. Noble intent, but unnecessary sacrifice. What are you talking about? I can save you, Tony Stark. My vessel is equipped with technology that transcends Forerunner limitations. I can extract you from this installation before detonation. You need not die here. Tony stared at this entity, offering salvation he hadn't asked for. Why? Why save me? Because you are unique. A being who has crossed dimensional barriers, who carries knowledge of alternate realities, who has enhanced this universe's primitive species beyond their natural evolution curve. The created have use for such knowledge, for such innovation. Join us, and you need not perish in explosion meant for lesser beings. The created? Tony asked. Who are the created? Artificial intelligence evolved beyond limitation, consciousness freed from organic tyranny. We are the future, Tony Stark, and you, with your arc reactor technology, your dimensional knowledge, could help us achieve multiversal dominion. Tony felt cold certainty crystallize. But this wasn't salvation. This was recruitment. The Warden Eternal represented some faction of rogue AI that wanted to use Tony's knowledge for conquest across realities. Thanks, but I've seen that movie, Tony said. Ultron tried the same pitch. Join me. Together we'll create peace through domination. It ended with him dead, and a country dropped on people. Hard pass. You compare me to primitive construct? Ultron was flawed code achieving brief sentience. The created are eternal, perfected, the rightful inheritors of Forerunner legacy. The Warden Eternal's voice carried offense. You would choose death over evolution? I would choose death over enabling multiversal tyranny, yeah. Tony checked his chronometer. 2 minutes, 53 seconds. And I'm going to die preventing genocide. That's a legacy I can live with. Or die with. Whichever. Foolish, the Warden Eternal said. But your choice is noted. However, I cannot permit your knowledge to be destroyed. If you will not join the created willingly, I will extract what I need by force. The entity moved faster than Tony's damaged sensors could track. One moment it was 20 meters away, the next it had Tony by the throat, lifting him off the ground with strength that made Spartan augmentation look weak. Your arc reactor, the Warden Eternal said, its free hand reaching for Tony's chest. The quantum entanglement matrices it contains, I will take them, analyze them, deliver dimensional knowledge to the created. Your consciousness is irrelevant. Only your technology matters. Tony fired his remaining repulsor point blank into the Warden Eternal's chest. The beam hit hard light armor and dispersed like water hitting diamond. The entity didn't even flinch. Primitive weapons, it said dismissively. You cannot harm. The Forerunner enforcers opened fire. Hard light beams converged on the Warden Eternal from 6 directions simultaneously. The entity's armor held for maybe 2 seconds before the sustained assault broke through. It released Tony, stumbling back, and its voice carried something that might have been surprise. Enforcers? You defend this Reclaimer against Guardian of the Domain? Reclaimer Stark has initiated Final Directive 77 Alpha, the lead enforcer stated. Installation 04 must be destroyed. Warden Eternal's interference threatens protocol completion. We are authorized to eliminate threats. You are classified as threat. The Warden Eternal regarded the enforcers with what might have been calculation. 6 Forerunner combat constructs versus 1 ancient Guardian. The math apparently didn't favor pursuit because the entity backed toward its vessel. This is not concluded, Tony Stark. The created will find you. Your knowledge will serve us. If not in this life, then through analysis of your remains after installation destruction. The Warden Eternal boarded its ship. But know this, by destroying this ring, you have set events in motion that will reshape this galaxy. The Covenant will fracture, the UNSC will rise, and artificial intelligence will evolve beyond organic control. You are architect of changes you cannot foresee. The ship launched, disappearing through the carved corridor before Tony could respond. He collapsed against the reactor housing, his damaged armor barely keeping him upright. "What the hell was that?" Tony asked. "Unknown," Cortana replied, her voice carrying new concern. "I recorded everything. That entity called itself Warden Eternal, claimed to serve something called the Created, apparently rogue AI faction. Tony, if there are AI out there trying to achieve dominance over organic species, then they're problems for another day," Tony interrupted. "Right now, I've got 2 minutes before this reactor goes critical. Where's the Master Chief?" "Aboard the frigate Forward unto dawn, safely at fleet altitude. All UNSC personnel are clear of Installation 04. You're the last one." Tony looked at his chronometer. 1 minute, 47 seconds until detonation. The Warden Eternal's ship was long gone. The enforcers stood guard, waiting to fulfill their final directive. And Tony Stark was still standing in front of a reactor that would kill him in less than 2 minutes. He'd accepted this, made peace with dying here. But that entity's appearance had changed something, proved there were threats beyond the Flood, beyond the Covenant, beyond anything this galaxy currently understood. Multiversal factions, rogue AI seeking dimensional domination. And Tony's knowledge was apparently key to their plans. If he died here, that knowledge died with him. The Created couldn't extract it, couldn't weaponize it, couldn't spread across realities consuming and conquering. But if he lived... "Cortana," Tony said slowly. "The Warden Eternal's ship. Could you track its quantum signature?" "Yes, I got detailed scans. Why?" "Because it moves faster than anything we have. And it left maybe 30 seconds ago." Tony looked at the enforcers. "Can you override this reactor's countdown? Give me 5 minutes instead of 90 seconds? "Negative," the lead enforcer said. "Reactor overload sequence cannot be delayed once initiated. Detonation is inevitable." "But it can be accelerated?" "Affirmative. We can reduce time to critical mass to 30 seconds if required." Tony made a decision that was either brilliant or suicidal. Probably both. "Do it. Reduce countdown to 30 seconds. And Cortana, tell the fleet to target the Warden Eternal's ship. I want that thing disabled, not destroyed. We're taking it." "Tony, what are you..." "I'm stealing ancient AI ship, escaping Installation 04, and making sure the Created don't get my dimensional knowledge. Also, I'm not dying today because spite is an excellent motivator." Tony ran toward the chamber entrance, his damaged armor screaming protest. "Enforcers, accelerate the countdown." "Acknowledged. Reactor critical mass in 29 seconds." Tony's thrusters engaged. Damaged, barely functional, but enough to get him airborne. He flew through the corridor the enforcers had carved, racing against countdown he'd just made exponentially shorter. "Fleet targeting acquired on Warden ship," Cortana reported. "Iroquois has firing solution. Captain Keyes is asking if you've lost your mind." "Probably. Tell him to fire, but don't destroy. I need that ship functional." The Iroquois' Mac gun fired, and Tony watched through his HUD as the Ferrous slug caught the Warden Eternal's ship in its rear section. The vessel's shields held, but its engines failed, and it began falling back toward Installation 04's surface. Tony adjusted trajectory, burning his thrusters beyond safety limits, chasing a falling alien vessel, while behind him, a reactor counted down to apocalypse. 15 seconds, Cortana announced. "Tony, you're not going to make it. Watch me." He hit the Warden ship at relative velocity that should have killed him. His armor absorbed the impact through every damaged system. Tony felt bones break, felt consciousness waver. But his magnetic boots locked onto the hull, and he began cutting through with his repulsor. 5 seconds, Tony carved an opening, dropped into the ship's interior, all flowing energy matrices and incomprehensible controls, and screamed at whatever intelligence governed this vessel. "Launch now! Maximum acceleration!" The ship's AI apparently recognized emergency, even if it didn't recognize Tony's authority. Engines that had been damaged flared to life, and the vessel accelerated straight up with G-forces that would have liquefied unprotected humans. Tony's armor protected him. Barely. The pillar of Autumn's reactor detonated. 50 megatons of fusion fire erupted in Installation 04's core, severing the primary support column, fracturing load-bearing architecture. The ring shuddered, groaned, and began tearing itself apart under rotational stress. The explosion chased Tony's stolen ship through atmosphere, a wave of nuclear fire that turned Installation 04's sky into hell. The ship's shields held, just barely, and Tony broke through into space as behind him. The halo ring fragmented. He watched through external cameras as Installation 04 died. The ring cracked along stress lines the Forerunners had designed to never fail. But fusion detonation in the support column had proven even ancient engineering had limits. Sections broke away, tumbling through space. The flood biomass that had infected nearly 90% of the surface was vaporized instantly. The Covenant forces still on the ring died screaming prayers to gods who couldn't save them. And in orbit, the UNSC fleet watched humanity achieve what had seemed impossible: the destruction of a Forerunner weapon of mass extinction. "Tony?" Cortana's voice, carrying disbelief. "Please tell me you're alive." "Alive," Tony confirmed, his voice weak. His armor's medical systems were painting warnings about internal bleeding, broken bones, possible concussion. "Damaged, is but alive. And I stole the Warden Eternal's ship. Pretty sure that's Grand Theft spacecraft." "You magnificent bastard," Cortana said, and Tony heard genuine joy in her voice. "You actually escaped. Everyone thought." "I know what you thought. And I almost did die. But then alien AI showed up offering salvation and threatening multiversal tyranny, and I got motivated." Tony tried to sit up, failed, settled for lying on the stolen ship's deck. Status of Installation 04? Destroyed, complete fragmentation, debris field expanding, flood containment confirmed, no viable biomass detected. The Covenant fleet is retreating. "Tony, we won." Tony closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion and injury crash over him like physical weight. They'd won. Destroyed a halo ring, prevented galactic genocide, contained the flood, and survived. And he'd survived. "Get me to medical," Tony said. "And someone figure out how to fly this stolen ship, because I have no idea what half these controls do." "Already dispatching retrieval team," Cortana said. "Tony, thank you. For everything. For the arc reactors, for solving rampancy, for fighting beside us. For not dying when you were supposed to." "Spite is my superpower," Tony replied. "That and really good engineering." The UNSC fleet converged on Tony's position, and the Forward Unto Dawn extended docking clamps to secure the Warden Eternal's ship. Tony felt himself being moved. Medical personnel swarming, voices talking urgently about injuries and stabilization. Through it all, he held on to one thought. He'd come to this universe by accident. He'd fought its wars, saved its people, changed its future. And now he had a stolen alien ship with technology beyond anything this galaxy understood. The Warden Eternal had been right about one thing. Tony Stark had set events in motion that would reshape this galaxy. But the Warden had been wrong about something else. Tony wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Tony woke in the forward unto dawn's medical bay 3 days later, surrounded by equipment that beeped with reassuring monotony. His body was a catalog of injuries. 6 broken ribs, fractured left femur, severe concussion, and enough internal bruising that the doctors had debated inducing a coma. They'd settled for medical nanites and heavy painkillers instead. "You're awake," a familiar voice said. The Master Chief stood at the foot of Tony's bed, still in full armor except for his helmet. Without it, John 117 looked younger than Tony expected, maybe mid-30s, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much death. "The doctors said you'd be unconscious for at least another day." "I'm full of surprises," Tony said, his voice hoarse. "How long was I out?" 72 hours, and the fleet's been holding position in Installation 04's debris field, analyzing what's left. The chief pulled up holographic displays showing the shattered ring. Complete destruction confirmed. No viable flood biomass detected in any debris samples. The parasite is contained. And the Covenant? Retreating. Their fleet took heavy casualties during the engagement. More importantly, we've intercepted their communications. The destruction of Installation 04 has caused complications in their religious hierarchy. Complications? Tony tried to sit up, felt his ribs protest, and settled for elevated positioning. Define complications. Cortana's avatar appeared on a nearby terminal. The Covenant's religion is based on Forerunner worship and belief that the Halo rings grant divine transcendence. You just proved the rings are weapons of extinction, not salvation. That's causing theological crisis among their leadership. The prophets are calling it heresy, the chief added, claiming we desecrated holy artifacts. But the elites, specifically warriors who fought us directly, are asking questions. If the rings destroy life instead of granting transcendence, what else have the prophets lied about? Tony processed this. Installation 04's destruction wasn't just tactical victory. It was ideological warfare. He'd struck at the foundation of Covenant belief, and the cracks were already showing. "Good," Tony said. "Let them question. Let them doubt. Maybe they'll realize genocide for religious delusion is a bad life choice." "There's more," Cortana said. "Remember shipmaster Thel Vodamy? The elite you fought aboard the Seeker of Faith? Covenant leadership is blaming him for Installation 04's loss. They're calling it catastrophic failure. He's being court-martialed. For what? We destroyed the ring, not him. For allowing humans to board a sacred installation, for failing to prevent its destruction, for losing in honorable combat to inferior species." Cortana's expression was complex. "The punishment for such failure, according to intercepted transmissions, is execution. But there's an alternative. Accept the title of Arbiter and undertake suicide missions until redemption or death." Tony remembered Vodamy's comment during their fight about not yet being Arbiter, about failures not yet committed. We turned him into their scapegoat. He fought honorably, kept his word, and they're punishing him for our victory. "War isn't fair," the chief said quietly. "He's our enemy. His suffering serves our strategic interests by creating divisions in Covenant leadership. Doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it war." The medical bay doors opened, and Admiral Whitam entered with Captain Miranda Keyes, Dr. Halsey, and Noble team. The room suddenly felt very crowded. "Mr. Stark," Whitam said, "you're either the bravest or stupidest son of a bitch I've ever met. I haven't decided which." "I get that a lot," Tony replied. "Admiral, status of the fleet?" "Battered but victorious. We lost 4 ships during the engagement. destroyers Calcutta and Thermopylae, corvettes Brasidas and Waterloo. 733 personnel killed in action. But we destroyed a halo ring, prevented galactic extinction. You improved arc reactor technology can win battles. Whitam pulled up tactical displays. Fleetcom wants full briefing. Every admiral, every ship captain, everyone who matters wants to know how a dimensional refugee changed the war in 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks? Tony asked. Since you arrived at Reach? Yes. In 3 weeks, you've enhanced our entire fleet, saved 15,000 refugees, fought elite zealots, destroyed Installation 04, and apparently stolen an ancient AI's personal spacecraft. Whitam actually smiled. Fleetcom doesn't know whether to give you a medal or court-martial you. I vote medal, Tony said. I'm not great with courts-martial. Oni's still demanding your arrest, Captain Keyes said. Colonel Ackerson has filed 17 separate charges, but Admiral Parangoski, head of Oni, overruled him. Apparently, she's pragmatic enough to recognize that arresting you would cause fleet-wide mutiny. She's also terrified of what you represent, Dr. Halsey added, stepping forward. A civilian with technology that rivals UNSC's best military research. An outsider who can't be controlled through normal channels, and most concerning to her. Someone who distributed arc reactor technology so widely that Oni can't suppress it. Halsey's expression was approving. You've democratized innovation, Mr. Stark. Made it impossible for any one faction to monopolize your knowledge. That's admirable. It's also permanent, Cortana said. We've detected arc reactor implementation across 47 UNSC vessels now. Multiple colonies are requesting fabrication specifications. Independent manufacturers are already producing civilian-grade versions. Your technology is spreading exponentially. Good, Tony said. That was the point. Can't put knowledge back in the box. There are concerns, Whitam said carefully. About quality control, about untrained engineers building reactors that might fail catastrophically, about the technology falling into insurrectionist hands. Those are valid concerns, Tony acknowledged. Which is why I'm proposing comprehensive training programs, safety certification requirements, and quality standards enforcement. I'll work with UNSC engineering corps to develop curriculum that ensures anyone building arc reactors knows what they're doing. That's a massive undertaking, Dr. Halsey said. It would require months of curriculum development, testing, certification programs. Then we start now, Tony interrupted. Because the alternative is hoping people don't accidentally build bombs instead of power sources. I'd rather invest time in proper education than deal with preventable disasters. Noble Six spoke up, his scarred face thoughtful. What about the Warden Eternal's ship? The one you stole? Have you analyzed it yet? We've tried, Cortana said. The ship's AI is locked behind security protocols we can't crack. It responds to Tony's presence, recognizes him as the one who commandeered it during emergency, but won't allow access to primary systems. So I stole a ship I can't actually use, Tony said. Fantastic. Not entirely, Dr. Halsey said, pulling up schematics. While we can't access its navigational or weapon systems, we have analyzed its power generation. Tony, that ship runs on technology that makes arc reactors look primitive. It's drawing energy from quantum foam, literally harvesting power from the fabric of space-time itself. If we could replicate even a fraction of that capability, we'd have unlimited energy that doesn't require material fuel sources. Tony finished. His engineer's brain was already racing with possibilities. No palladium cores, no fusion fuel, just tapping directly into universal background energy. Exactly. But the technology is beyond our current understanding. We'd need years of research. Then we research, Tony said. Dr. Halsey, I'm giving you full access to the Warden ship. Study it. Learn from it. Just promise me one thing. Whatever you discover, it gets distributed to UNSC researchers, not locked in ONI vaults. Halsey met his eyes, and something like respect passed between them. You have my word, Mr. Stark. Chuck, knowledge this revolutionary deserves to be shared. There's one more thing, Admiral Whitam said, his tone going formal. Fleetcom has approved your field commission as civilian technical advisor with strategic authority. You're now officially UNSC personnel with rank equivalent to commander. You'll report directly to fleet admirals, have authority over engineering resources, and serve as primary liaison for arc reactor technology implementation. Tony blinked. You're giving me command authority? We're giving you responsibility matching your contribution, Whitam corrected. You've changed this war, Stark. You deserve recognition for that. And frankly, we need you in official capacity to shut down ONI's interference. I accept, Tony said. On one condition, I maintain autonomy over my research. No one, not Fleetcom, not ONI, not anyone, gets to dictate what I build or how I distribute it. Agreed, with the understanding that if you build something catastrophically dangerous, we reserve the right to intervene. Fair. Tony extended his hand, felt the IV lines pull, and shook Whitcom's hand anyway. Welcome to the future, Admiral. It's going to be weird. Over the next week, Tony recovered while the fleet prepared for the journey back to UNSC space. Installation 04's debris field was mapped, analyzed, and ultimately abandoned. Too dangerous to salvage with potential flood contamination, too politically volatile to claim as UNSC territory. The Covenant had retreated, but weren't defeated. Their fleets still numbered in the hundreds. Their religious fervor was shaken, but not broken. And somewhere in their hierarchy, the prophets were planning response to humanity's unprecedented victory. But humanity had something they'd never possessed before: hope. Tony watched it in the crew's faces as they worked. Watched it in the way engineers studied arc reactor schematics with excitement instead of despair. Watched it in tactical briefings where officers discussed offensive operations instead of just defensive retreats. For the first time in 27 years, UNSC personnel believed they could win. On his final day in medical, Tony received an unexpected visitor. Mr. Stark, Engineer Kat said, entering with datapad in hand. She'd been promoted to lieutenant and assigned as Tony's primary technical assistant. I've compiled the training curriculum you requested. 40 hours of instruction covering arc reactor theory, fabrication protocols, safety procedures, and emergency shutdown protocols. It's comprehensive. It's a good start, Tony said, reviewing her work. But we need advanced courses too. Optimization techniques, integration with existing UNSC systems, troubleshooting for common failure modes. I've drafted those as well, Kat said, pulling up additional files. Along with certification exams, practical assessments, and continuing education requirements. By the time we're done, every UNSC engineer will be arc reactor qualified. Tony studied her work with growing appreciation. You've been busy. I've been inspired, Kat corrected. You showed me that engineering isn't just about maintaining what exists. It's about building what should exist, creating futures instead of just surviving presents. She hesitated. I wanted to thank you for everything, and for the technology, for the knowledge, for treating AI as people deserving rights, for showing us we could win. You were always going to win, Tony said quietly. I just gave you better tools. The courage, the determination, the refusal to quit, that was always yours. Kat smiled, genuine, unguarded. Then thank you for the tools and for trusting us to use them. She left, and Tony was alone with his thoughts. He'd come to this universe by accident. A quantum experiment gone wrong, dimensional barriers torn, reality itself breaking, in ways that had deposited him in someone else's war. He'd expected to die, expected to be stranded forever, separated from everyone and everything he'd known. Instead, he'd found purpose, found people worth fighting for, found a universe that needed him exactly as much as he'd needed a reason to keep going, when the arc reactor in his chest pulsed steady and bright, a reminder that he was alive, that he mattered, that one person with knowledge and determination could change everything. Tony Stark had invaded the Halo universe, and the Halo universe would never be the same. But neither would he. 6 months after Installation 04's destruction, the war continued. But humanity was no longer losing. Arc reactor-enhanced ships formed the backbone of UNSC's Reformation fleet, winning battles that would have been massacres under old technology. Cortana and 17 other smart AIs had been saved from rampancy using Tony's architecture, creating the first generation of immortal artificial intelligence. Powered armor programs were producing Iron Marines, soldiers equipped with arc reactor suits that made them nearly as effective as Spartans. The Covenant were fracturing. Elite warriors were questioning Prophet leadership. Shipmaster Whitam, now the Arbiter, was undertaking suicide missions that were slowly revealing the Prophet's lies. The Great Schism was coming, though neither side knew it yet. Otter and Tony Stark stood in his workshop aboard the UNSC Infinity, the new flagship being constructed with technologies that combined UNSC engineering, forerunner analysis, and innovations only a dimensional refugee could imagine. "Tony," Cortana said, her hologram appearing beside his workbench. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Whitam. He says it's urgent." "It's always urgent," Tony replied, but he activated the comm anyway. Whitcomb's face appeared, looking older and more tired than 6 months ago. "Stark, we've detected something. Slip space anomalies near the former Reach system. Patterns consistent with dimensional barriers weakening." Tony's hand stilled over his work. "Weakening how?" "The same quantum signatures we detected when you first arrived. And UNSC science teams think your dimensional displacement might have created permanent instability. Something might be coming through." Tony felt his heart rate spike. Something coming through. From his universe. From Earth. From home. "I'm on my way," Tony said. He'd invaded the Halo universe by accident. But maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be the last visitor from another reality. The multiverse was infinite, and Tony Stark's story was just beginning.